Rise to the top with VALR Energy and their new partnership with the Professional Fighters League. Fueling champions inside and outside the smart cage, VALR's nitrogen-infused orange cream and blueberry tart delivers a smooth, creamy flavor with 175 milligrams of natural caffeine to fuel your day. Ready to rise to the top? Grab your VALR Energy drink today, available on Amazon. Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 312, Duplessis versus Strickland 2. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as usual, and fueled by some energy drink or other, is Keith Shillan, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how's it going?
I'm doing good, dude. I gotta be honest. You know, I'm an energy drink junkie. I drink 2 a day, sometimes 3. Last week I drank 4 in 1 day. That's when I was up for 30 hours. So I'm really excited to have VALR to be a sponsor of Sherdog. Hope I get my hands on a lot of those VALRs, and so I'm excited about that. I'm also excited about this card, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm excited about this card too. This card kind of snuck up on me in terms of just it actually coming down the pike, and then in terms of what it actually has to offer, just fight to fight. Here is a statistical tidbit for you, and I still need to check it, but so there are 13 fights on this card, 26 total fighters. 12 of them, almost half of the entire lineup of the card, has 10 or fewer professional fights. That might be a modern day record for a UFC card that is a normal quote unquote card. It's not a tough finale. It's not a road to UFC finale. It's just another UFC pay-per-view. Having almost half the fighters have 10 or fewer professional fights, including half of the co-main event title fight, is something. There are a lot of fresh faces here. Some debuting fighters, plenty of Australian and Oceanic fighters who fought on Dana White's Contender Series last season. So as 13 fight cards go, pretty intensive tape study. There were some fighters on here that I did not know enough about coming into this. I'm sure you can relate.
Yeah, I couldn't have had a busier week. If you asked the word, I mean, I had some crazy stuff happen at my regular job. So one day I talked about on the recap show. I was up for 30 hours straight. We had the middle school states, so I want to shout out real quick to a couple of my boys, my son's teammates who I also coach. We have so we're a travel team, so we have kids from all over the state and different teams. Actually, all of New England. We have Massachusetts kids and Connecticut kids. I'm very proud that we added 6 more middle school state champions from our team. So congratulations to them. I think we had like 4 or 5 runners up. One weight class, we had 2 guys going against each other, so that was a little awkward. Couldn't cheer for anybody, but and then God knows how many places we had. So congratulations to my boys.
That's fantastic.
And girls. I don't want to. There was some. My girl Callie killed it at is state champion, and in the most exciting matchup of the entire tournament. So
congratulations to the team in that case. Looking at the lineup here, what stands out to you? People or matchups that you're most excited for?
Well, I'll do this. I'll give you a grade first. When we grade, it's one thing we don't do. We don't sugarcoat. We're not the ones like, listen, I'll say this because he's my friend. Like Craig Allen, I love the guy to death. Love him to death. Like we did a show together for years. Met him in person. His brother's awesome. But like we don't do that. Oh, we got a big one this weekend. We don't do that like Craig did. Good for him. If you're comparing this for pay-per-views, this is weak, man. I give like a C-. What I'm looking forward to, the co-main event, Weili Zhang versus Tatiana Suarez. I think that's a really spectacular matchup. I think you can make a strong argument it should be the main event. Just because, I know Strickland has like a cult following based on his personality, and then Duplessis is like the most underappreciated guy in MMA right now. With all due respect to Bilal Muhammad, but I just think they both seem like generational talents to me. So that's why I'm really excited about that match. I think it's a couple good prelim fights that I'm excited about. Jenkins and Santos is a really, really one that's probably the one that's standing out to me more than anything. So yeah, I'm excited, and I'm excited for some of the. I think there's one or two guys that are new additions to the UFC that I'm looking forward to. So, how about you?
Yeah. Same here. And I mentioned off the top the enormous preponderance of inexperienced up and coming fighters on this card. That's the kind of thing that makes for an A+ fight night, but isn't necessarily what people are looking for in, one of the UFC's bigger events of the year. But yeah, having said that, once we're buckled in, I'm excited to see most of these fighters. And we haven't even really talked about him yet, but the other Topuria brother is making his UFC debut on this card. The path to big things is right there if he is any good at all. Obviously.
Yeah. It's funny when you look at the two of them, he looks like the fighter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like he's little, you can tell they're brothers. They have a very similar face, but one's a pretty boy with gelled up hair. This other guy's got the short, crew cut. Looks like he'd be a character in the Warrior movies.
Yeah.
he fits the part.
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas Ilya, if he's in that movie, he's like the sleazy promoter.
Yeah, I was gonna say he looks like he should be his agent. Yeah.
Yeah. So plenty to talk about here as we plow through a bunch of 6-1, 7-0, 7-1 fighters on our way up to the big top of this card.
You know what it feels like? It feels like a Contender Series card with big surprise. We got 2 title fights right on the top of the Contender Series card.
And one of those title fights has a 10-0 fighter in it. The feature fight has a 7-0 fighter in it. It's rookie night. Yeah, it's something. Any other general thoughts about this one before we dive into the prelims?
No, let's do it.
All right. First fight up at UFC 312 is a men's flyweight matchup between Hyun Park and Nyamjargal Tumendemberel. Park, the 29-year-old South Korean, is a perfect 9-0 as a professional. He's a perfect 2-0 since joining the UFC out of the first season of Road to UFC. So he has 2 fights on the Road to UFC tournament, 2 actual UFC wins. The most recent of those, however, was a little over a year ago. He fought Shannon Ross, Australian incidentally, at UFC Fight Night Song versus Gutierrez back in December of 2023. He's been on the shelf ever since. He makes his return here, back in the familiar confines of Sydney, against Tumendemberel. The 26-year-old Mongolian is 8-1 overall. That's the good news. The bad news is his one loss came in his most recent outing. He entered UFC Fight Night Yan versus Figueiredo. That was UFC Macau last November as an undefeated prospect. He dropped a split decision to Carlos Hernandez for his first professional loss. He'll be looking to bounce back from that here, and he is not favored to do so. Park is minus 225, Tumendemberel plus 175 coming back. You and I both love the men's flyweight division. It's as fun as they get. You will very often say pick any 2 names out of the top 15 or 20 fighters out of a hat. You're going to have a great matchup that's probably reasonably closely matched.
I sorry to interrupt you, Ben, but dude, I really want just a one night of just flyweights, or just the UFC take your entire flyweight roster and just have a one night event, just do that every 3 or 4 months. Flyweights up again, and just entire card of flyweights. That'd be incredible.
I'd pay for it. It'd be amazing. Having said that, as awesome as flyweight is, it isn't as deep as the divisions 135 through 170. It is easier for a new flyweight to drop into the UFC and make an impact quickly. Do you see that kind of potential for either of these guys? And who do you think gets it done on Friday? Or it's Saturday.
Yeah,
sorry.
One of the guys I think has really high potential. We'll get to that in a minute. One thing we didn't mention in the open, where we apologize for taping this show a day later than we normally do. There is no truth to rumor that it took me an additional day to learn how to pronunciate Tumendemberel's name. That's why we had to tape 24 hours. I'm not even trying his first name. That's not even. On the recap, I'm calling
his last name sounds like a substance that's banned by USADA. When he tested positive for Tumendemberel, he's gonna be out for 6 to 12 months.
Yeah. It's like Alistair Overeem popped hot again, or Josh Barnett. Yeah, we're calling him Tummy on the recap show.
All right.
So yeah, this fight. I mean, I like the card starting with flyweights, and I'll start with Park. This is a guy that he's pretty well rounded. He's a really good striker on the feet. A lot of pressure, tight boxing, fast hands. Got a nice power jab. I love his straight right. I love that he attacks with combinations, which really kind of all flyweights do. You can't be a low output flyweight. He has plus power. I mean, he crushed Shannon Ross with a body shot, and yeah, he was a big favorite in that fight. But that's what you do when you're a big favorite. You run through a guy like he did. He does throw a lot of naked leg kicks, which I'm a little worried about. Hopefully, he can clean that up. He has some defensive issues. He's very hittable. He void strikes by pulling his head right back. He also pillars. He's a solid wrestler. Good entries, nice back takes. He's got 4 submission wins on his record, so he's definitely a submission threat. Move over to my man, Tummy. Tummy's a very aggressive dude. He's a wild man. He really steps into his shot. He kind of overthrows his shots, though, loading up on everything. He does have good power, I'd say, or everything he throws is Hail Marys. Eventually, you're going to get one. He does drop his lead hand a lot, which makes him very hittable. He will look for takedowns, though he isn't that great at it, despite having a judo and a sambo background. I'm assuming he was the janitor in those gyms, maybe, but he has weak takedown defense. He needs to improve his top control when he gets it down. He's still like the way he fights on the feet, he does on the ground too. Like he's jumping for submissions and losing control. If he gets on top, I mean, I like his ground and pound. He is a submission artist. He does have 5 career subs, and he's got great cardio. That's the thing that most impressed me. Like this dude does not slow down despite fighting like an absolute berserker. This should be a really fun fight. Again, flyweight's always fun. Park is way more skilled, but Tummy, I mean, he's such a wild man that he's going to be hard to, prepare for because there's not many people in the gym that can kind of, mirror what he does. That said, you ask, who do I see as could be a potential top 15 guy? That's Park. I think he's like such a cleaner striker. I think he's the better wrestler. I think he's better than Tummy everywhere. I think Park pieces him up on the feet. And then I think he finished him. I don't pick a lot of knockouts for flyweights. I think Park's going to do it. Give me Park by first round TKO.
Yeah, I like the breakdown there. It's funny. And you're even more old school as an MMA fan than I am by a couple of years. And
we're in the same generation, though. Jeez, dude.
Yeah, we're both pretty tough.
Yeah, I was watching MMA when they were doing the Foxtrot, dude. Yeah. Yeah, when Susanna was topping the charts, that's when I was watching MMA.
I mean, MMA was in black and white when we started watching it, guys.
Not far.
But so it's a funny irony that you, of course, will get when we were talking about a Korean fighter, and we're like, I don't know if he has anyone to prepare with that's as wild as the guy he's going to be fighting. Yes. Like his opponent's a real wild man.
Yeah, that's actually good. That's a very good point.
And that's a really good funny thing is,
you got me on that one. Yeah, you got
it. He's almost a throwback in that way. Like he's definitely a very skilled fighter, but he's one of like the last Korean guys this young that still has that kind of old school 2006 Korean fighter aggression. But yeah, I agree that Tumendemberel is a wild man, and that seems to be a defining trait of Mongolian fighters who train in Mongolia at this point. Because of that, this should be a slobber knocker, especially by flyweight standards. But I'm with you here. Both guys have defensive lapses, but unless Park is compromised by the time off or compromised by the injuries that necessitated the time off, I think he's going to be more able to take advantage of Tumendemberel's lapses than the other way around. And I also think that Park will have offensive wrestling as a safety valve, where I'm not sure that's the case for his opponent. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if Tumendemberel could take Park down, but I think especially once Tumendemberel gets his motor running and he's swinging the haymakers, Park could get well-timed reactive takedowns pretty easily. Having that in his back pocket as well, I'm with you. Real fun fight, but I favor Park a little bit everywhere, and I'm going to say he gets it done by KO as well, second round. Next up on the UFC 312 undercard is a lightweight matchup between Quillan Salkilld and Anshul Jubli. Salkilld, the 25-year-old Australian, is 7-1 overall. This will be his UFC debut. He fought on the Contender Series last September, taking a unanimous decision over Gage Young. That punched his ticket to the big octagon, where again he will make his bow against Road to UFC product Jubli. The 30-year-old from India is also 7-1. He's 2-1 since joining the UFC a little over 18 months ago. He did lose his last time out. It was at UFC 294 almost a year and a half ago, October of 2023, where he got knocked out in the third round by Mike Breeden. He has been on the shelf ever since, waiting for his opportunity to bounce back from his first career loss. He is not favored to do that, to say the least, as Salkilld is the biggest favorite on the entire card. He is minus 575, where Jubli is plus 425. For me, looking at this, I think Quillan Salkilld is he's a mildly interesting lightweight prospect. If you ask me if any debuting lightweight is a future top 10 guy at 155, I'm going to say no, just because it's such a hill to climb. But I do think he's a guy who's going to stick around for a while. At age 25, it wouldn't shock me if he became a ranked fighter at some point down the line. I think this is more of a vote of no confidence in Jubli. He's just, he's what Road to UFC is for, honestly, because he is the type of fighter that, at least at the stage in his development that he was about 2 years ago, would never have got within shouting distance of the UFC, if not for a reality show specifically meant to mine talent from that realm of the world. I mean, I know what he wants to do in the cage. He's a tall, rangy guy, a kickboxer by preference, who he wants to fight and outfight, but he just doesn't have what it takes. I mean, he knocked out Jenkins, but Sargi is also a marginal talent and was like half his height and gave up like a foot of reach to him. He was able to get his game going against him, but against most UFC quality lightweights, it's just not going to happen. Jubli doesn't have the footwork or the speed or the power to keep shorter, aggressive fighters out of his phone booth. Takedown defense is going to be an issue for as long as he wants to be a striker in the UFC lightweight division. Again, I don't know if Salkilld is a future contender at 155, but he's going to look like one on Saturday night. Give me Salkilld to piece up Jubli on the feet, probably. If he wants to just have this whole fight on the feet, I think he's going to win the striking battle, but he has a number of tricky ways to get the fight to the ground. I could see him getting Jubli down and just really taking advantage of him there as well. He, at least in his regional footage, showed some nice positional awareness on the ground, sharp ground and pound. I think that's the way this one ends. Give me Salkilld to be winning the fight comfortably through a round and a half when he gets Jubli to the ground and just hammers him out on the ground. Second round TKO for me.
Yeah, wow. I figured that Salkilld would be the favorite, but man, I didn't think he'd be that big a favorite. Holy moly, especially making a UFC debut. Pay-per-view still makes it a little more, nervous, being that obviously it's going to be a PAX arena. Jubli, I think I'm a little higher in Jubli than most people. Like, I'm not like, I'm not buying stock. Dude, let me tell you real quick. I'll give you a stock. I was, I don't know what I did. I was actually in an interview, so I was interrogating somebody, and I had my phone on, and I paid my son's wrestling coach that day through Venmo, and I must have didn't lock it. And then while I'm interrogating somebody, I bought $172 worth of crypto from Venmo on my in my phone. So if anybody, and then I was gonna sell it, and I was losing all this shitload of money. I'm like, I'm too engaged now to. So,
if
any crypto experts out there want to give me some advice, please tell me what to do. I didn't buy. It wasn't Bitcoin. It was some other company. So hopefully it wasn't a Canadian company. That's why it's plummeted into something. I don't know. I think So, so Jubli, I mean, he's a really big guy for the weight class. I think he's a fairly technical striker. He likes to work from range, but his output can be really low at times. Way too many single strikes. He is a good striker though. Like he's accurate. He throws straight shots down the pipe. I love his left hook. He does well to wrap his overhand right around his opponent's defense. He works the body well. He's got, I'd say plus power, though he can load up a little bit too much on shots. He cuts angles well, so he's kind of tough to counter. He's good at like landing, sliding out of the way of the counter, and then kind of attacking again, so being like first and third. I like his step and knees. He's not a very good offensive wrestler, and he's a very weak defensive wrestler. So he's a fairly, one-dimensional fighter. He is hard to hold down probably because of his size, but he has gassed out in the past. And worst is, I thought, Mike Breeden is as low UFC talent is, and he mentally broke in that fight. I mean, he's the more skilled fighter of the two, and he just hated the pressure from Breeden. And I think he kind of gave a game plan for a lot of people. Salkilld was a guy that I kind of really liked when I did some tape study on. He's only 25 years old, so that's going to stand out to me. And there's a lot of guys, you hear that a lot, 25, 24, a lot of guys like that on this card. He's a long and lengthy lightweight, great output on the feet, good snap in his shots, nice jab, follows up with straight shots down the pipe, huge kicking game, hard kicks to the body. I like his front kick. He adds kicks into his combos, which I love. He does keep his chin a little too high in the air, and he was cracked a lot in his contended series fight. But that fight was an absolute banger. If you haven't got a chance, check out his last fight. It was a really, really fun fight. I like his entries though. He's a good wrestler. He sets up his entries behind his strikes well. Good entries. He has those like long Michael Kessler type arms or John Jones type arms where the entries don't look as good technically, but he kind of makes up for it by closing distance with those long arms. Great back takes. He's got 3 submission wins, and he's got great cardio. I mean, like I said, the last fight was such a banger, and he didn't stop. I think Jubli's striking skills is fairly good. I mean, I wouldn't say special or anything like that, but I don't know if he has the mental game. I didn't expect Salkilld to be this big a favorite. I do think he's a really good addition to the UFC. I am picking him. I think he's going to press the action, make his opponent work. I think he does that to Jubli. I think his output, it would just be too much to match. I think he takes Jubli down. I think he eventually subs him. Give me Salkilld. I'll say he wins by second round submission. Now, you want to buy some crypto? Let me tell you.
How did you accidentally buy crypto? I
didn't lock the phone. And I you butt dial somebody. I bought crypto. So like on my like pay request screen, I didn't lock it, and right next to the pay request is crypto, and I must have hit it and must have like moved my legs around. And well, actually, thank God it went up. I was way down, but I'm down $21.94 from last week. I bought
$75.
Yeah, I Ethereum, whatever that is. I bought a whole shitload of that.
Ethereum is actually one of the oldest ones that's still around. So it's not
it sucks right now. What the fuck? It's so old and bad that GFL just drafted them.
Welterweights take the cage next at UFC 312 as Jonathan Micallef faces off against Kevin Jousset in an all-Australian matchup. Micallef, the 25-year-old Australian, is 7-1 overall. This will be his UFC debut. He fought on the Contender Series last October, choking out Muhammad Ado in the first round. Highlight reel choked him all the way to sleep with the triangle. At any rate, that gave him a little bit of buzz heading into this debut against Jousset. 31-year-old New Zealander, 10-3 overall. He is 2-1 since joining the UFC as the outgoing Hex Fight Series welterweight champ. He won his first 2 UFC bouts before running into Brian Battle last September. Battle knocked him out in the second round, so he'll be looking to bounce back from his first octagon loss. He is favored to do so. Jousset is minus 240, Micallef plus 190. You mentioned it before, Keith. Plenty of debuting fighters, plenty of 24, 25, 26-year-olds. The lanky Aussie Micallef is one of them. Anything special there?
No. Like he's okay. Like I don't mind him joining the UFC, but like he's nothing special. I think correct me if you're wrong. Maybe I was sometimes when you're talking, I'm like rearranging, especially when I know I'm going first. I can always tell if I'm going first or not. Did you say we have a battle of two Australian fighters, and then you say Jousset from New Zealand?
Yep, I left myself a note to cut
for that. Leave us in that. Leave us in that. You got to take your beating for it.
No, because
they love to correct me. Like you got to take your beating.
No, I'm already waiting because now I'm just hoping that the Kentucky Judo Federation and the Mongolian Judo Federation like show up at your door at the same time, and we get like a full-on rumble.
Oh yeah, that'd be fantastic.
I don't need like Anchorage BJJ and a bunch of New Zealanders showing up at my house. Like,
I think Australian and New Zealand like stop fighting with each other. Just come together. Like no one else in the world knows the difference between you guys. Just join together. It's like North and South Dakota. Like should just join. Like, okay, you can I give you one? I want to.
Yeah.
All right. You know how like Trump is making all these changes in the world and all. If I ever became the leader of America, like I wouldn't be go after the panic amount, all the things that like real politicians do. I'd try to change two things. I want to change the name of West Virginia. And I'll tell you why. North and South Dakota and North and South Carolina, there isn't a Carolina. So they're individual. Like West Virginia was so lazy to come instead of coming up with a name, they're just like, yeah, well, we're west of Virginia. Well, how about like east of, I don't know, what's next one, Kentucky or something? Like east, I don't know. Show my geography skills. So I want to change the name of West Virginia. Who's with me? Who's back at it? Can someone sign the petition? And I also want, even worse than West Virginia is a Canadian province. I don't know if you know the Canadian provinces, but one is called the Western Territory.
The Northwest Territory.
Northwestern, yeah, Northwest Territory. Like, come on, I think that's worse than West Virginia. Like, come up with some stupid name.
That's pretty bad. Northwest. Yeah. That's.
I'm not worried about anybody coming at me with that because ain't nobody live up there. So, anyways, back to this fight. Jousset. I mean, I've said this before. The guy's probably the biggest welterweight I've ever seen. He's a long and lengthy guy. He's not a great athlete. He's kind of flat-footed. He's a little raw on the feet with his boxing, but he makes up for just being insanely tough. Good volume. He throws some tight, clean shots, which he really cleaned up when he first came to the UFC. Works behind a good jab. He showed in his last fight he's starting to get some pop in his hands, hurting people. He sets up his shots well with feints. His biggest issue is his lack of head movement. He keeps his chin right in front of his opponent and makes it a gigantic target. He will eat a shot to kind of land some of his own. We saw him get knocked out and rocked several times. Rocked several times in the last fight. He does throw a lot of kicks. He's got a good kick in. He's huge, so it's smart of him. Hard leg kicks. He's got a quick high kick. He uses his size well in the clinch. Very physically strong. He likes the Muay Thai plum clinch. Good dirty boxing inside. Nice slicing and elbows. He's got a judo black belt, so he will look for some takedowns. Gets the fight to the ground. Good top game. Though his takedown defense, it's looked good in some fights, looks bad in other ones, so I'd say it's pretty inconsistent. How do I say the guy's name? Micallef? Okay.
Micallef,
yeah. He's only 25, so that's something I really like. Not a really good athlete, though. He's a southpaw. He's striking pretty rudimentary boxing. Like what I've seen of him, nothing really stands out to me. He will look for some takedowns, but I wouldn't categorize him as a run. Some of his takedowns he gets more from like body locks, takedowns from the clinch. Weak takedown defense himself. If he gets the fight to the ground, he advances to a better position. He's got 3 submission wins, including you mentioned on the Contender Series. I like that he chains submission tags together well, and he showed in his last fight he can get subbed off his back. I was a little busy, so I didn't do as much tape study as I really liked in some of these guys. I definitely would have liked to dug into Micallef a little bit more, but from what I've seen, this should be a fairly easy win for Jousset. He's faced the better competition. He hits harder. I think he's better on the ground. I think he has way more volume. I think the volume is going to be too much for Micallef. I think Micallef might be tough. I know he might take a beating, but I think he's going to take a beating for the whole 15 minutes. Give me Jousset in a pretty easy decision.
Yeah, the one thing you mentioned that kind of stood out to me was how fluid Micallef is on the ground compared to kind of how slow and plodding he seems on the feet, and that he chains submissions, because his submission on the Contender Series, it was a highlight where he's pointing to the ref, he's out, but he caught the guy out by just smoothly, moving from, like triangle, threatening the armbar, just like overwhelming the guy's defenses. And that's something he could do to Jousset. You mentioned that sometimes it seems like it's hard to get Jousset to the ground, other times not so hard. But based on what I've seen of Micallef, his best routes to victory against Jousset involve Jousset making a mistake. And Jousset just seems like he's got his head on too well and is a bit of an overachiever. It's hard for me to picture that happening. So I'm with you here. And I'm not going to be different just to be different. I think this one does go all 15 minutes, but I do think it's a bit of a drubbing by Jousset over Micallef. We head back to the lightweight division as Rong welcomes Cody Steele to the UFC. Rong, the 24-year-old from China, is 25-6 overall. He's 5-3 in the UFC. He's coming in off of a win. He's coming in off a loss. He fought most recently at UFC Fight Night Burns versus Brady last September, where he got pounded into a basically doctor stoppage TKO by Chris Padilla. That snapped a 4-fight win streak for him. I should mention, Rong was released by the UFC, came back through Road to UFC, where he wasn't really part of the brackets, but they just featured him on the cards, and that paved the way for him to come back to the UFC. But yeah, he's back in the UFC. He's looking to get back in the win column here, and he's going to have to do it against Steele. 29-year-old Texan is 7-0 as a professional. He fought on the Contender Series last October, knocking out Chase and Blair in the second round. He's also a standout from Fury FC. In fact, I think up to the Contender Series, all of his professional bouts might have been in Fury. Odds here do favor the newcomer. He is -210, Rong +175. Here's a little thing about me. If you've watched this show even once before, we've probably let slip that I am based in Texas. Specifically, I'm based in Houston. I'm reasonably plugged into the local scene here, and I'm a shameless homer for Houston fighters. Having said that, here's an insight into how my brain works. I know quite a few fighters locally, but the people that are actually on my speed dial are coaches. So if you are from Texas, but you don't train in Texas, I will forget that you're from Texas. Like, Cody Steele is from Austin. That's like 2.5 hours from me, which is very close by Texas standards.
Like 2.5 hours is close. 2.5 hours is New York City for me.
Dude, I can drive for 11 hours and still be in Texas. He's from Austin, which is not far from me. He's fought his first 6 career fights. I think 4 of them were in Houston, and I plain forget that he's from Texas because he hasn't trained here for a little while. At any rate,
Austin, that's a big college town, right?
Yeah, that's where University of Texas is.
Nice.
Like, yeah.
It's
like it's one little liberal island in the middle of like Texas, basically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's that town.
Never mind. That was a cool place to hang out. Never mind.
Well, it's a cool place for like live music, nightlife, stuff like that. But yeah, it's a good place to visit.
Yeah.
I like living in Houston. At any rate, regardless of whether he has betrayed the Lone Star State to go train in Vegas or not, Cody Steele is a good prospect. He's a good size lightweight. He's a hell of an athlete. He's always been a striker by preference. And, while I've, made my few jokes here at his expense for leaving Texas to train, he really has refined his game. I'm not sure how many camps he's been at Syndicate at this point, but he's gone from kind of a power punching guy who threw good volume to a guy with a little bit more of a refined striking game. About 18 months ago, he knocked out a pretty good friend of mine, Nico Echeverry, a guy that I thought might have been in the UFC by now. He's got quality wins on the local scene. He's going to be a good addition to the UFC lightweight division. And Rong Zhu is kind of the appropriate first test because I feel like we know what we have in Rong. And it feels weird to say this about a 20.
Picking him is wrong. Sorry.
It's dude, I'm about to talk about a guy whose last name is Thicknesse. Like the jokes are going to write themselves, believe me. But here's like for a guy he doesn't even turn 25 for another month and a half. You know, he's got over 30 career fights. He was a 20-fight veteran before he ever got to the UFC. I feel like we kind of know what we have in the guy. He's a big lightweight. I'm always disappointed in his athleticism. I always expect him to be a better athlete than he is. He's not terribly fast or fluid or coordinated. He is very strong, but he doesn't often put himself in positions where he can use that to his best advantage. Considering how big he is and like his height and how much of his height is in his upper body, you would think he could turn into a Tim Means type clinch monster where he just uses the clinch, uses the cage to smother quicker fighters. And if you learn to do that, you can fight until you're 41 and remain competitive at a decent level. But instead, he gets in brawls with faster guys. He gets taken down. He gets clipped. There are a lot of fighters on this card that are really young, and you mentioned it as a positive off the top because, yeah, you never know what they're going to turn into. You know, they have a chance to fix their shortcomings, refine what they're good at. Rong has had multiple stints in the UFC to do that at this point, and it's just not coming. So this may be as good as it gets for Rong Zhu, and I think that's going to be bad news against Steele. That all of Rong's worst instincts are going to play against him here. If he gets in a brawl with Steele, I think he's going to get knocked out. If he plays it more cautious, I think Steele can take him down and beat him up there. So I favor Steele pretty strongly in this one. The 2-1 line feels about right, considering we're talking about a serious disparity in experience, a very experienced fighter against a guy who's promising, but again, has fewer than 10 career fights. But give me Steele by second round knockout here. And I think it'll be one of the ones that deserves a performance of the night bonus, even if it doesn't get it.
I love how Ben does this big speech about Steele. I don't really picture him from Texas and this and that, just to make a homer pick, trying to disguise that he's going to make a homer pick.
I disown him from Texas and then talk about him like he's my next door neighbor. It's terrible.
And then you talk about Rong Zhu, that, you know, he could fight this way and he'd be 40. Instead he fights, he's not going to last very long. You don't realize that it's Rong Zhu that really is the Texan, because he's like Austin, you know, not here for a long time, but here for a good time, you know? So, yeah, I'm with you, dude. The most amazing thing about Rong Zhu is that the dude has like 100 fights and he's just 24 years old. I say he's a, you know, good boxer. He can be patient at times where, you know, he uses his accuracy and kind of just dulls, and then when there's an opening, he lands good shots. But then he can, like you mentioned, get drawn into firefights. He does hit hard, and he hasn't even reached his power years yet, though. Based on all the fights he has, he might be a lot older in the game than he might already be past that. He's got a big kicking game, hard kicks to the body, hard calf kicks. But again, a guy has a million fights. No one's told him to keep his chin down. I mean, his chin is really high in the air. He isn't a very good wrestler either, though he will look for takedowns occasionally. He's more of like a funky style wrestler instead of this explosive one. He's a weak defensive wrestler. He is a submissioner. He has 7 subs on his record, but he also been subbed 3 times himself. I like that Steele trains with Syndicate MMA. That's obviously been a premier team in the league. He's very aggressive on the feet. He throws a lot, throws a lot of hard shots, really steps into a shot. He throws a lot of like power hooks. Kind of reminds me of like like a Chad Mendez kind of like body and frame and like these short, tight hooks. I see his plus power. He rips the body really well. He finished his last opponent with a beautiful body shot. He needs to learn how to change up his tempo a little bit. He kind of crashes the pocket in a very similar rhythm. So that's why his last one was doing very successful early on, because it's kind of easy to pick up his timing. But that's one detail that, just small little things, or just kind of the way he comes in, he can kind of sidestep it a little bit or feint his way in. When he throws big shots, he tends to admire his work a little bit, so he's open to be countered. I could see him like landing a big shot and then someone just following up one back at him and knocking him out because of that. He throws hard kicks. He's got like a quick high kick, but he throws a lot of naked kicks, and he has such a wide base that he's open to leg kicks. He looks to wrestle. I think you're much higher on his wrestling than I am. I don't think he's that good at wrestling, man. Though if he gets the fight down, I like his ground game. I mean, you're talking about a former combat BJJ world champion, good control once he gets it down. He's a submission threat. I like this fight. Still, I think you're right when you said that Rong is a good like first fight for somebody in the UFC. Like he's the proper opponent. I don't like Steele isn't technical as Rong is, though sometimes he doesn't fight to his best ability, Rong, but I think the pressure would be hard to handle from Steele. I think he loses the first round, but maybe takes the second or third. I think he keeps Rong on his back foot for a long time. I think he maybe get a few takedowns in. I'm not way blown away with Steele as you are. I do think he's a good addition. I don't like you seem way more confident in the pick. I say he ties Rong out with his pressure and maybe get some takedowns. I think he finds that submission. Give me Steele by third round sub.
Next up on the UFC 312 prelims, we have the double debut of Colby Thicknesse and Aleksandre Topuria. Thicknesse, the 25-year-old Australian, is 7-0 as a professional. He steps in on relatively short notice for his countryman, Cody Haddon, who had been scheduled to fight on Saturday. Instead, he's going to step up here. Part of the reason he gets the call is that, well, he is one of the better lighter weight prospects in Oceania right now. He's 7-0. Part of the reason would be that he is a teammate and primary training partner of former featherweight champ Alex Volkanovski, but definitely deserves a shot here. And he's going to get it against another fighter who has multiple routes to the UFC, both on his own merit and his associations, in the form of the older Topuria brother. Aleksandre Topuria, 29 years old. He's about a year older than featherweight champ Ilya. He's 5-1 as a pro. That's the good news. The bad news is that it's been almost 2 full years since the last time he fought. He last fought over in Western Europe in like May of 2023. It was a first round knockout. Basically all of his fights have been first round knockouts. Again, he had been scheduled to take on Cody Haddon. Hadn't fell off the card due to an undisclosed injury. In steps Thicknesse on short notice. The line perhaps reflects that, as Topuria is minus 450, Thicknesse plus 350. Keith, we're both dying here. It's one thing that there are certain fighters whose name means something and it works. Like Brian Battle. Brian Battle, that's a perfect name for that guy. Thicknesse is not a good name for a men's bantamweight, especially a 5'9" length bantamweight.
He's skinny, he's scrawny.
I don't know if he's one of the best fighters in the UFC, but I know he is not one of the thickest.
How about what's his first name? Colby?
Yeah.
This is what I want everyone to do. Just put in the chat what his nickname should be. Like, Colby, I wish I had some thickness. Are you down with the thickness?
Oh yeah, some Disturbed reference there. Colby, down with the thickness.
I want him to come out, dude.
We'll see.
There's got to be some rap song about like thick women. Dude, I know there's the big butts, but there's got to be like, there's got to be like some real, like, when they're saying like, I like them thick. Like, he needs to come down like that.
You're gonna watch like
don't come out to Metallica or AC/DC. Come out with some, all right. I don't know, DJ.
In the chat. In the chat, give us a nickname for Colby Thickness.
That's gonna be great. I can see RC. No one's gonna be RC Kim. He's gonna come up with a go on.
He's gonna give us like a rundown of 5.
Oh no. The I can't think of her name. The girl.
Portia.
Yeah, she Portia. and Bob Simpson can come up with some good ones. So.
Yes. All right. So starting from the I think the uncontroversial standpoint that Aleksandre Topuria is not his younger brother. How good is this guy, and how excited should we be that he's in the UFC? He is just 29 years old. It's like,
yeah, but that's
is he Mark Hughes or Muhammad Usman, or is he like a legit threat at 135?
Man, it's really tough. I mean, he already has more losses than his brother, so he has that going for him. It's really hard to know what you get in because he doesn't have a lot of fights under his belt. He hasn't fought in forever, and if we're being honest, he has beaten a bunch of low-level guys. I mean, look at his opponent's record when they faced him. They're 12-32-1, and their records are worse. Like I didn't pull in what their current records are. It's not good. And now he looks, and then he finished this guy so quick that there's not a lot of like way to really dig deep in to get like feels from. And then when you do, there's such big gaps in time. You're like I'm looking 3 fights ago, and he's like 23, and it's like, he's 29. Yeah.
I should have mentioned it's been almost 2 years since he fought, but he has 6 career fights, and in between the first 3 and the last 3, there's a full 5-year plus layoff.
That's my point. Yeah.
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 And he was doing other stuff. He was boxing, he was grappling. I'm sure he was working closely with his brother, whose career was, really ramping up at that time. It's not like he was sitting on the couch, like packing on weight, but yeah, like his own career does not seem to have been a huge priority.
Yeah, no. I mean, what I've seen, he looks really good. Again, take us for worth. He's a really good athlete. On the feet, he throws some hard shots. I like his right hand. He has a really hard right hand. Really steps into his shots. He's got some nice pop in his hands. He's a good wrestler. I mean, he's got some fast entries. He advances his position well on the ground. He's got some hard ground and pound. But again, like he finishes guys, and one guy he fought, I think his record was like 3-22 or some shit like that. Like, and it wasn't that long. It was a couple 2-3 fights ago. Mr. Thicknesse, only 25. Not a great athlete. He looks very uncomfortable on his feet. He throws a lot of single strikes, hard kicks though. Throws a quick high kick. He will look for takedowns, but his entries are kind of ugly. He likes some body lock takedowns if he can get that. If he gets the fight to the ground, I don't mind his ground game. Like he definitely looks like a BJJ guy who like has to wrestle, and he's like, wait a minute, this is way harder when you don't stand on your knees. BJJ people must fucking hate me. He looks to advance to a better position on the ground when he gets there. He's got good ground and pound. I saw one fight, he got the mount and started dropping down like 12-6 elbows. It was kind of nice. Good grappling. He's a submission threat. I mean, what'd you say Topuria was? Like, how big of a favorite was?
Minus 450.
Yeah, I mean, I had a feeling he was going to be a really big favorite. If his last name was Johnson, I think this fight would be a much closer pick. And it's not like I'm all in. I aim into the Thicknesse, but it's not like going all in on Mr. Thicknesse. You never go all in on the Thicknesse, but I really wanted to pick against Topuria because he shouldn't be fighting the UFC yet, based on his level of competition, based on his time off. However, I kind of feel like they found the perfect matchup for him. They found a guy that he's a way better athlete than. He's also going against a guy that's going to want to try to take him down and grapple, and he's the better wrestler. So I think that's what's going to happen. I think Topuria is going to stop some of Thicknesse's takedowns, maybe land a takedown or a couple himself, reshooting his shots or win the scramble and end up on top. I think he's going to land some hard shots from on top. I think he's going to avoid submission attempts from Thicknesse on the bottom. Give me Topuria by decision.
Yeah, I got a similar feel in that I don't know if the line should be this wide, but the problem is if Topuria wins the way I think he's going to, it's going to look like it justifies the line, because if Topuria wins, I actually think he's going to blitz Thicknesse and it's going to be over quick, and the hype train is going to start cranking full steam ahead. Yeah, but you already summed up the real crux of the fight, and that is that Thicknesse's best routes to victory just involve him running afoul of Topuria's best weapons. But, you know, Topuria is definitely not his brother in terms of polish, in terms of well-roundedness, certainly in terms of high-level experience, but he has the same basic frame, similar athleticism, and some of the same weapons. Fast, heavy hands. Yeah, Thicknesse is going to be trapped on the feet here, and it's going to be a choose your poison thing. Like, just brave the artillery and sell out to try to get the takedown, or try and fight an outfight and kick a quicker, harder hitting guy who can take you down anytime he wants. Gimme Topuria by first round knockout here. It's another one that I think it might be a spectacular one, and deserved or not, like, Topuria's he's gonna do some serious line jumping in terms of how much attention he gets in this division because of the result of this fight, and because of obviously his name and his resemblance to Ilia Topuria on the day he needs a haircut. Women's flyweights are up next at UFC 312 as Wang Cong looks for some redemption against Bruna, Brazil. Wang, the 32-year-old from China, is 6-1 overall. That one loss came in her last outing. She fought at UFC Macau last November. That was the Hyun versus Figueiredo fight night, where she entered as a big favorite and ended up going to sleep courtesy of a rear naked choke by Gabriela Fernandez. That was her first loss in 3 UFC appearances, her first loss as a professional mixed martial artist, period. So she will be looking to get back to winning ways here against Brazil. The 31-year-old, well, Brazilian, is 10-4-1 overall. She's 2-2 since joining the UFC out of season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series. She's coming in off a win. She fought at UFC 304 last July, taking a unanimous decision over Molly McCann. Odds here favor Wang heavily. She is one of the biggest favorites on the card. She is minus 500, Brazil plus 360. And I must admit, I was a little surprised by this. Wang Cong is somebody that I featured in my column this week, Stand and Deliver, as one of the fighters on this card that has the most at stake other than the obvious. And in her case, when she fought Gabriela Fernandez, that was a vote of confidence from the UFC. She got she got main card placement on a card in China. They matched her up against someone in Gabriela Fernandez that seemed tailor-made to provide a highlight reel finish for Wang. And instead, she got exposed pretty badly. It was one of the bigger upsets in the UFC in several years. I mean, she entered the cage as a minus 1,000 or greater favorite on a lot of books and ended up getting choked all the way to sleep. That's, checks all the boxes. One of the more humiliating losses in the UFC in all of last year. Having said that, the UFC clearly has not cut bait on Wang entirely, because they've booked her here on another pay-per-view, one that features Asian fighters pretty heavily, and they've matched her up against someone that, at the very least, is unlikely to choke her to sleep. I like this one a lot, actually. There's a bit of an old school feel to this, in that you got Wang, who is a former Wushu Sanda world champ. You've got Bruna, Brazil, who's a former Muay Thai world champ. We're gonna have potentially a high level clash of styles type striking battle, of the kind that we used to get a lot of the time. Japanese MMA seemed built on this for a long time. But with all that in mind, I'm surprised that Wang is a 5-1 favorite here. Brazil has looked perfectly good to me in her. She's 2-2 in the UFC, but all four of the fighters she's fought have been better than the ones that Wang has fought. Like they kind of threw Bruna Brasil right into general population. Like, you know, Denise Gomez, Molly McCann, they're not world beaters, but they're women solidly in that, you know, kind of 12 through 25 spot on the roster. And Wang has gotten mostly softballs so far. Like Brazil has fought better competition. She's looked like reasonably sharp as a striker. I'm not seeing what it is here that makes the bettors push her into a 5-1 favorite. Wang, when she's been fighting women who are severely overmatched, like, you know, Victoria Leonardo, for example, even then, you know, she had Leonardo kind of reeling on the back foot and, you know, caught her with a punch combination that started the ball rolling downhill, and the thing was over seconds later. I don't see her doing that to Bruna Brasil. And if she doesn't get the knockout, I don't know that she necessarily has a style that's going to make it easy for her to like put a stamp on rounds and win them definitively. I see this fight as being close to a pick'em. And if the odds makers are calling someone a 5-1 favorite, and I think the fight is close to a pick'em, I'm going for the underdog on general principle.
Nice.
Give me Bruna Brasil, and I'm going to say it goes to a split decision, that we have a 3-round kickboxing match that's fun and full of interesting contrast, but neither woman really gets hurt badly, and neither one really pulls away from the other. So it'll probably be one of those ones where, you know, there's only one unanimous round out of the 3. Scorecards are all over the place, but give me Bruna Brasil by upset in what will be one of the bigger upsets of the year.
Yeah, dude, I love it. I love it. I totally agree with you about the betting line. Like, I don't understand why that's. How do you lose your last fight? Probably get matched against a better fighter, and you're this big of a favorite. That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Like, I think Brazil is actually a step up in competition. Anytime I think of Wang Kong, I don't remember who it was, and I apologize. Who put in the comments? I think it was our last fight. Everybody Wang Kong tonight. That is an all-time great comment in Sherdog history. So, I don't know. I don't remember who did it. But you have my respect. That was fantastic. And we're old enough to understand that one. Yeah, this fight. You were just talking for, I don't know, 5 minutes or so, and the whole time I decided not to scroll through my notes and bring up Wang Kong Brazil. Now I got it. What does Wang Kong do good? I mean, she's a pressure striker. It's funny because she's such a dynamic striker, but she'd be a lot better if she wasn't very flat-footed and kind of plodding. You know, on the feet, I'd call her a kickboxer based on, you know, the way she throws her hands and her kicks. She has quick hands. She does love to get in the pocket and brawl a little bit. She really steps into her shots, though. Because of that, she loads up a lot and telegraphs. She has serious power. I mean, you see the one-punch walk-off of Victoria Leonardo. I mean, that was fantastic. The best part of the game is that she mixes her punches and kicks together well in combinations. A lot of inside leg kicks. She has a quick high kick. She doesn't move her head that too much, and she kind of keeps her chin on the air. That's a little worrisome. She will look for takedowns, but I wouldn't say she's very good at it. She more like catches kicks and gets the fight to the ground that way. She did get a submission on road to UFC, but though she was just submitted in her last fight, so we wouldn't call her a grappler. Bruna Brasil, I mean, I've always had a hard time with her because she looks great one fight and terrible the other. She's a really good athlete. She's explosive. She's a good kickboxer. She sometimes throw way too many single strikes, though. She sets up her shots well with feints. She'll toss out some spinning attacks. She's got a very big kicking game. She loves high kicks. She likes knees up the middle, has some defensive holds. She keeps her hands low and kind of wide, which I hate. She gets her chin high in the air. The one fight that I say she looked really bad was the Denise Gomez fight, where it's like she was getting tagged every single strike. Couldn't block the right hand. and sometimes if she's losing a fight, if plan A isn't working, she really doesn't go to plan B. She will wrestle. She gets some takedowns. She likes throws inside the clinch. I'd say she hasn't shown improvement in her ground game, though she's a weak defensive wrestler. She going way back to the Contender Series. She hit a sweep in the Contender Series, and she has 2 submission wins. I'm glad that you picked Brazil because I don't really have a good read on this fight. If I was a betting man, I would just pass or I would do what you did and pick the underdog. I think both fighters have looked brilliant at times and then terrible at times. I really could see Brazil, kick in from range or maybe more likely even get some takedowns or winning on the ground. The concern I have is her striking defense, and Cong has good output and power. Like even her loss in her last fight, she had good volume in that fight. She was doubling up the strikes. If she could catch the chin, she could put it out. Dude, it's funny that you got a negative 500 favorite, and I'm with you, man. I'm not super confident in Cong. If I knew Brazil would wrestle, I would probably take her. Or if she showed me any kind of more defense, I would take her. But I'm worried that she'll like crash into the pocket and get clipped a couple times. So I can see her get rocked a few times earlier than getting put away. So I'll go with that. I'll say Cong gets a knockout. Give me Cong by second round to go. But again, not a very we were very close to having a consensus, pretty big consensus upset pick.
The UFC 312 prelims soldier on with a lightweight matchup between Tom Nolan and Viacheslav Borshchev. Nolan, the 24-year-old Australian, is 8-1 overall. He's 2-1 since joining the UFC out of Season 7 of Dana White's Contender Series. After dropping his debut to Nicolas Mota, he is rebounded with back-to-back wins over Victor Martinez and Alex Reyes. The most recent of those, the Reyes fight, was at UFC 305 last August. He picked up a unanimous decision. So he will look to make it 3 in a row and certify himself a quietly rising young prospect in this division at the expense of a guy that wanted to say the same a couple of years ago in the former Borshchev. 33-year-old Russian by way of Northern California is 8-4-1 overall. He's 3-3-1 since joining the UFC out of Season 5 of Dana White's Contender Series. He's coming in off a win. He picked up a split decision over James Yontop at UFC on ESPN, Cannonier versus Bahalio last August. But that bright spot aside, it's been a bit of a rocky road for the man they call Slava Claus. And nonetheless, he is a slight favorite here. He's minus 140. Nolan is plus 110. Okay, so the most obvious standout quality about Tom Nolan is that he is gigantic. I feel like we're going to say that about a lot of the fighters on this card. We already have.
Sure.
And in fact, I'm going to introduce the new tallest fighter in the UFC in an hour and a half here. Tom Nolan is as big as you can get and weigh 156 pounds the day before you fight. I mean, he is, and he's 6'2". He's got a big wingspan. He has a bit of that kind of like Randy Brown type body where, yeah, he's super tall and has wide arms, but then, it's mostly legs, which I think does make the height and weight deceptive, but he's a huge guy and everything kind of runs off that. Unfortunately, he has tall guy defensive liabilities in the striking. And if you're a regular listener of this show, you probably hear Keith and me say the same phrases over and over again. And it's not because we're in a rut. I mean, we might be in a rut. It's not because we're not creative. Or maybe we're not. But it's because the same truths hold true for a lot of professional mixed martial artists, even at the highest levels. Like, even at the UFC level where, barring a few recent signees or legacy fighters that the UFC is really slow to cut, pretty much everybody's in the top 100, worldwide for their weight class. Even at that level, I mean, Keith, off the top of your head, name me a really tall fighter who moves his head well.
That's a Fury.
See, like if you ever hear Keith say, yeah, he slips punches by leaning straight back, he doesn't take his head off the center line, he backs straight up, and
Is he used to? Is he used to?
Yeah,
used to.
Right, but they're
and is Silver used to. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you're talking about like 6'8" guys.
Yeah, or the equivalent 6'2",
Sure.
155 pounders. It's hard to do. It's hard for anybody, when striking is just one part of what you have to learn the head movement of, say, a great boxer or a great kickboxer. And
which means if you're at a bar and you see like a really tall guy, just freaking blast him. You could take him. The biggest guy in the bar, you could take him, guys.
Yeah. Send the pictures to us, please. Or have your next of kin send the pictures to us. And part of it is, if you are taller than just about everybody you have to fight, slipping punches by moving your head straight back works until it doesn't. We learned the limitations of that in Nolan's UFC debut. Nicholas Mota did the Nicholas Mota thing, because Nicholas Mota is a middling UFC talent who does one thing well. He's a little ball of muscle that throws massive overhands, and he almost throws them Vanderlei Silva style, where he's looking at the ground while he's throwing hooks. But about one fight out of every 3, they catch the other guy on the chin, and that's why Nicholas Mota still has a job in the UFC. Like, if Nolan and Mota fought 10 times, I don't know who wins 5 or 6 or 7 out of 10, but it probably ends in a first round knockout like that, just that once. Nolan's got tools. He has liabilities that he's going to need to overcome. He has plenty of time to do it, but that doesn't mean it's an automatic that it happens, because, as I've been trying to belabor here for the last couple of minutes, plenty of fighters, even at the highest levels, simply never do. And it's weird to say this against a guy in Borshchev who is a former kickboxer at a reasonably high level and came to the UFC touted as a knockout artist, but he's actually not a bad guy for Nolan to maybe show that he's made some strides on the feet against.
Yeah.
Like, Borshchev is a bit of a disappointment. Like, coming in, through the Contender Series, he had plenty of hype. He former professional kickboxer who came in through Team Alpha Male, where, if you want a camp to certify, okay, this guy's learning how to wrestle, that's, as good as any. But in practice, he's been a good striker. Like, he clearly is technically skilled, but he's been put on the back foot and clipped clean by much less skilled guys. Worst of all, Chase Hooper. Chase Hooper tapped him out, but Chase Hooper also basically outstruck him. Chase Hooper dropped him. That's not a good look. Borshchev does have all the offensive weapons. He punches super hard. I think his most effective weapons at the UFC level, though, have been his kicks. He's got good leg kicks, fast kicks with both legs. He'll switch them up to the body. He will go high with them. I'm leaning. Can't both these guys lose? I want to pick the mild upset and go with Nolan again, but there's just too much there for Borshchev to hit, and with there being less of a fear of the takedown as there was with someone like Chase Hooper or Mark Diakiese, if Borshchev can sit down on his strikes a little bit more, open up a little bit more, I think Nolan's open to be hit to the legs, hit to the body. Maybe Borshchev does find that chin hanging, but give me Borshchev to win a decision here. I don't think it's one that's going to restart his own hype train, but it's going to give Nolan even more to take back to the drawing board. I'll take Borshchev by decision here.
Oh, man. This is an intriguing fight. it's definitely going to be an action fight the way these guys fight. Borshchev, I mean, you mentioned it. He's a very decorated striker. You know, I think he was K1 kickboxing champion. He does fight like a Muay Thai striker. He stands tall right in front of his opponent. He can fight out of both stances. He has quick hands. He's explosive. He's accurate. Nice crisp jab. Follows up with hard hooks. He's great when he gets in the pocket. He crushes the body. I always go back to that Dakota Bush fight where he just brutalized him with body shots. He's good at slipping his head up the center line and then countering his own shots. He has serious power. He's got a big kicking game, kicks to all areas of the body, some of the best calf kicks in all of MMA. The problem with him, and you mentioned it, is his durability. He's been hurt in a lot. I mean, Nazim Sadikov hurt him bad. He was dropped in bad by Chase Hooper. I mean, Chris Duncan dropped him with a calf kick. So those, and these are all, you know, fairly recently. He's a terrible defensive grappler too. Possibly the worst defensive wrestler in the UFC. I mean, Mark T. Casey took him down 11 times. Mike Davis took him down 9 times. I mean, you look at those numbers, it doesn't mean that he gets up well. He has no offensive wrestling skills. His sub defense against Chase Hooper was, you know, somewhat okay against a pretty good grappler, but Tom Nolan, he's only 24, so he can make huge improvements. He's a good athlete, but you mentioned he's huge for his weight. He's like 6'2", 6'3". He's long and lengthy. Great output on the feet, nonstop action, just walks through punches. He has quick hands. He's accurate, has nice power, and he really hasn't come into those power years yet. He throws some spinning tacks out there. He throws a lot of kicks, hard kicks, nice stepping knees. Not a great offensive wrestler. His spinning attacks kind of leaves him open to get taken down too. If he lands on top, he's got some good ground and pound. But again, you have to worry about his durability. I mean, you mentioned Nicholas Mota knocked him into next week. He was dropped by Victor Martinez despite like destroying him. And he kind of fights down to his competition. I mean, he should have murdered Alex Reyes and didn't even get a finish in that fight. So,
dude, you mentioned something that, like, Vic Martinez is a friend of mine, but kind of like a poor man's Nicholas Mota, the one thing he does at even a remotely UFC level is throw hard right hands, and he walked right into one.
Yeah, there you go. So, I mean, obviously Nolan is a great path to victory. One, if he just kind of wrestles, even though he's not that good a wrestler, but Borshchev is such a terrible wrestler. I hate Nolan's defense. Now, Nolan can, you mentioned, actually like what you said, like you could strike with Borshchev. I mean, you know, what's coming back at you is extremely dangerous, but these Muay Thai guys, I mean, there's a different defense now, and they've also taken years of damage from striking. There's only so many punches you can take. So he can land a shot, especially like I can see like a knee up the middle or front kick or something like that. But Nolan eats a lot of shots himself. I say Borshchev hurts him. I think he might chop down on his legs with calf kicks, and then maybe Nolan reaches down to the calf or something like that, and that's when Borshchev hits a big shot. I think Borshchev's going to put on I don't think he's going to have a lot of good performance left, but I think this might be one of the last ones he has in the UFC. Was a really good performance. Give me Borshchev. I see he wins by first round knockout.
All right. Next up at UFC 312, and at least as the card is constituted as of the beginning of fight week, the top prelim is a featherweight matchup between Jack Jenkins and Gabriel Santos. Jenkins, the 31-year-old Australian, is 13-3 overall. He's 3-1 since joining the UFC out of season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series. He has wins over Don Shainis, Jamal Emmers, and Herbert Burns, sandwiched around an injury loss to Jose Mariscal. The most recent appearance, UFC 305 last August, where he beat Herbert Burns in exactly the way you would expect someone to beat Herbert Burns in 2024. That got him back on track after the kind of freakish injury loss to Mariscal, and he's going to look to start up a new win streak here by getting his second straight against Santos. 28-year-old Brazilian is 11-2 overall. He's 1-2 in the UFC. He made his UFC debut a little under 2 years ago. getting no favors from the UFC, facing Laurent Murphy and David Onama in his first 2 fights, and acquitting himself well, nonetheless, before running into Yi Jia last September. That was at UFC Fight Night Burns versus Brady. He finally picked up his first UFC win, snapped his first losing streak of his career. He also will be looking to get a new win streak going. He is favored to do so. Santos is minus 240, Jenkins plus 200 coming back. I gotta say, I found this line a little out of whack because, and I say this as someone who's been a little slow to come around on Jack Jenkins. Jenkins has looked good in his UFC fights. Now, part of that is that Don Shainis and end stage Herbert Burns were about as close to a walkover as you get in the modern UFC.
You can't use Herbert Burns and walk in the same sentence. They're gonna walk anyway.
He's getting carried across the threshold by his smaller brother.
Yeah,
it's so, man. I'm sorry, Gilbert Burns carrying Herbert Burns out of the cage is still just one of the best things.
he reminds me of the guy carrying the person, like a cripple to Jesus, like my brother Jesus. Maybe, you know what? He's like, he's not heavy. He's my brother.
See, it's because
nobody else gets that reference.
That's some Boys Town shit right there. See, maybe because I'm an irreligious heathen, I go straight to like Sam carrying Frodo up Mount Doom.
Yeah, there you go.
I can't carry the ring for you, but I can carry you. Oh my goodness! But
I mean, going, and I'm coming with you.
Yeah, and if not for the weird broken elbow against Mariscal in a fight that he was winning, by the way, he'd be 4-0 in the UFC right now. He wouldn't have been facing Herbert Burns last year. He would have been in a fight that would have had him on the cusp of seeing like some fringe contenders. Like, I think Jenkins has been pretty good, and he's been cut from a similar mold as a lot of the Australian fighters on this card, where kind of a hard-nosed guy that feels a little overachieving. Like he's a better athlete than a lot of the people on this card, but he's not like he's not Michael Chandler, out there. He's not Terrence McKinney. Like he's a decent athlete who feels like he overachieves. Well-rounded skills. He's definitely going to be giving up some speed and athleticism to Santos. Like Santos does look to be a standout athlete. I lean Santos here, but I don't know if I lean towards him 2.5 to 1. Just Jenkins has not, he's not performed against anybody in his 4 UFC bouts like he should have been a greater than 2 to 1 underdog. He's brought all these guys into dogfights. I think he's going to do it with Santos again. Give me Santos to win 2 rounds out of 3, probably by having the more memorable individual moments of offense. Like, back and forth rounds where the thing that sticks out most in the judges' minds is Santos, catching Jenkins and rocking him, or getting a high amplitude takedown and, briefly moving to side control is probably what will carry the rounds for him. But I think this is going to be a dogfight. It's one of the fights on the whole card I'm most excited for. It might be the fight on the undercard that I'm most excited for. Give me Santos in by decision in a fight that will deserve fight of the night, whether it wins it or not.
Man, I love this fight. It's so funny. If you told me that somebody was a 2 to 1 favorite, I was going to go on a big rant on how they're disrespecting Santos and he shouldn't be this big of an underdog. I'm very surprised that Santos is the favorite, based on being in Australia, based on who they've faced and their records. And I first of all, I think this fight is awesome. I think this kind of happens to Jenkins where and sometimes they do this to some prospects. They're super exciting and action guys, and they just always match them up with other action great fighters, and they never get to well, I shouldn't say Jenkins because he did get some softballs, but I mean he's had like getting Mariscal as you rise up is always tough. Even if you look good against them, like that's really tough. Poor Santos, I don't know who he pissed off, but this, I think this is a shame. Like we joke about me, like my other job being the UFC order guy, or the bout order. This one should be third from the top. Like this one is, to me, is by far the best prelim fight. It's going to be super exciting. There's no way this fight is boring. Jenkins, I mean, he's a guy, I like Jenkins. I think I like him even more than you do. I think he's a really good striker, really good boxing. He can fight out of both stances. He marches down his foe with just high output. He uses a lot of feints, even some leg feints to set up his shots. I like he does some up and down feints. He switches stance in the middle of attack to kind of take ground too. He cuts a lot of angles, kind of showing some variety in his attacks. He's got fast hands. If he gets in the pocket, he's really good. I love that he cracks the body. He's got a very big kicking game, hard kicks to the body, ends combos with kicks. He does avoid strikes by backing straight up, which is concerning, but he closes distance. He can battle in the clinch. Nice dirty boxing, good knees inside. He has some judo background, so he goes from trips there. He's got some good entries. He's a good wrestler, quick entries, good top game. He does need to improve his overall control. He lost some position at times against Don Shanis. But if he gets to fight the guard, he looks to advanced position on the ground, hard ground and pound. I said it before. He like slides his Tito Ortiz elbows to the guard. He has 3 submission wins. He does struggle to get off the bottom a little bit. That's concerning. And he fights at like a great pace. I mean, you go back to the Shanis fight, he was like nonstop action. Santos, fantastic athlete, really good athlete. He's a high output striker. He can also fight at both stances. He just stalks his opponent. He's a builder to get stronger as the fight moves on. He cuts angles really well. A little bit unorthodox, a little herky-jerky. He's a pressure striker, kind of pressure counter striker where he slips his out of range, looks land the slip left as a counter, throws nice punches down the pipe. When he's in the orthodox stance, he's got a really clean straight right. I like that he works the body. He also has a big kicking game, hard calf kicks, nice teep kicks. He crushed Yi with a front kick in his last fight. He will throw some naked leg kicks, which leaves him open to be countered. He loves going aerial with some flying knees. He's a good wrestler, good entries, good top game, gets the fight down to the ground, good back takes, mean ground and pound. He looks for sub when the fight hits the ground, and he's got 4 submissions on his record. I absolutely love this fight. I think it's phenomenal. Like I said, I think this one should be on the main card. I like both guys a lot. I flip-flopped. This, to me, I can't believe this fight isn't a pick-up. I don't think either guy should be really favored. I think they're both really good strikers. I think they're both really good wrestlers. I was kind of trying to find a weakness. The only weakness I really feel like glaring weakness, I would say everyone has weakness, but I mean like glaring weakness that I found might be Jenkins' inability to get off the bottom if Santos can kind of get him down and like backpack him and stuff like that. That's why I'm going with Santos too, but man, I'm with you. I'm not very confident at all. Like I'm going to say he wins by split decision, winning close rounds by just having more control time in a really fun, scrambly kind of high action fight. So give me Santos by split decision.
The 5-fight main card of UFC 312 begins with a welterweight matchup between Jake Matthews and Francisco Prado. Matthews, the 30-year-old Australian, is 20-7 overall. He is 13-7 since debuting in the UFC as a teenager just over a decade ago. He is coming in off a win. He fought just once in 2024. It was at UFC 302 back in June, where he took a unanimous decision over Phil Rowe. He'll look to make it 2 wins in a row. That would be his first winning streak in almost 5 years. In order to do so, he will need to get past Prado. The 22-year-old Argentinian is 12-2 overall. He is 1-2 in the UFC. This will be his welterweight debut. His first 3 fights in the UFC all took place at 155 pounds, and with losses to Jamie Malarkey and Daniel Zellhuber sandwiched around a win over Otman Azatar, he has decided that his best future lies at 170 pounds. That may be the case, but according to the odds makers at least, it does not start on Saturday, as Matthews is a greater than 2-1 favorite. The Celtic Kid is out there around minus 215, Prado plus 180 or so on the comeback. I can't help but notice some of the parallels here. It's hard for me to believe that Matthews isn't still 19 on some level. I remember clear as day when he did a very friendly call out of Sage Northcutt, because they were the two youngest male fighters in the UFC at the time, and competitively it kind of made sense with where they were in the division. That was a long time ago.
5 years from now, he'll be called a prospect in the GFL.
Well, you'd have to lose a lot of fights between now and then to be GFL material. But in some ways, he never quite reached the heights that people thought he might have. But in other ways, maybe he has. There's a certain logical fallacy that if someone's pretty good at something super young, well, just logically, they're going to keep getting better as they go along. And that may not be the case. And so where do we sit now? Jake Matthews has 20 fights in the UFC. He's 13-7 in one of the 2 or 3 toughest divisions in the entire sport. He has a couple of bad losses. He has a couple times he's lost badly, but no real inexcusably bad losses, and he's beaten some good people along the way. I mean,
yeah,
even at the time he beat him,
in the world is okay.
Yeah. The 30th best welterweight in the world is a much more skilled and well-rounded athlete than the 10th or 11th best heavyweight in the world.
Yeah, that's right.
He's still like a big, powerful welterweight. He's not quite the lights out athlete that he looks like. You look at the guy and you'd expect him to, like move like a George St. Pierre or something. He doesn't quite. He's a little slower and more plodding than you would think, but he's become a competent, technically sound striker. He's a pretty good, if unconventional, offensive wrestler, just a guy that seems to have a knack for finding ways to get people to the ground. And once he's there, I think that's his best skill set. He's a good grappler. He can be positionally sound. He throws hard ground and pound when he remembers to, and always with a mind towards advancing position and maybe looking for the submission. I see the parallels because Prado, one of the youngest people in the UFC, especially when he got signed. Like when he got signed, I think he was 20 years old. He might have been 21. He's moving up to welterweight, but I think that's fine because he was a big lightweight. Not the tallest lightweight on the roster, but just a big dude with muscle on his frame. He had fought at 170 as well as 155 back in Argentina. I mean, this is probably a good move for him, but if he struggled with Jamie Malarkey and Daniel Zellhuber, I think he's going to struggle with Matthews for a lot of the same reasons. Like Matthews has never turned into a lights out striker, but he's become a pretty good bread and butter boxer. I think he could frustrate Prado on the feet in a lot of the same ways Malarkey did. And I think unless Prado catches Matthews by surprise with something well-timed, it's going to be up to Matthews where the fight takes place. So I do lean Matthews here to kind of just pick up a solid, well-earned decision. I could see him probably winning all 3 rounds, even if they're individually competitive. But nonetheless, I hope Prado decides to stick it out at 170 because as young as he is, and with some of the athletic gifts he has, I do think he has a future in the UFC. And I think cutting to 155 was probably not the best strategy. So I think he loses. Here's hoping he sticks around at 170 and continues to develop.
Yeah, there's something poetic about Matthews facing like a really young Prado, kind of like full circle. Matthews, he's always been a really good athlete, I think. He moves well. I agree with you said. His striking has really improved. I definitely wouldn't say that's what, the top part of his game is, but yeah, he's a good counter striker, a slip and rip guy. I love his counter right hand. He can throw a little too many looping punches though. he doesn't, and sometimes he doesn't let his hands go enough. He has shown, like I go back to like the Darius Flowers fight. He had really good hand speed in that fight. I'd say he has plus power. I like that he works the body well. His striking used to be just used to set up his entries, but he's really abandoned his wrestling in some fights. I mean, Philip Rowe, his last win, he didn't look to wrestle, and then Michael Morales, another fight, he really didn't look to wrestle. So I still don't think this is the wisest strategy, but he's shown that he can take some shots and he has some dog in him. So he doesn't have to get the fight to the ground. Now, he is a solid wrestler. He's got some good entries. He got a strong top game. He looks to advance position on the ground. He's got good ground and pound. He's got 7 submission wins, so he definitely has a lot of advantage over people in that area. Prado, I mean, he's only 22, so don't be surprised if he really makes jump and improvement. And we've seen, like, when people change weight classes, I think some people do it out of desperation. Other people do it because their body is changing, and I think that might be the case with Prado. And he's a guy that, he could be finding the right weight class now, so it actually might even help his improve even more. He's pretty well-rounded. He's a pressure counter striker, tight boxing. He looked really fast against Otman Zatar, but that was his really best performance. I love his left hook, though he does look for it a little too much. He hits hard. I mean, he's got 6 TKOs, and he's not really close to his power. He's just now moving up and getting more liquid and be more hydrated might actually help him some more. He really springs into his shots. He throws tight, hard hooks. He loves some spinning attacks. He throws a lot of high kicks. His main defense is moving his feet, a lot of L-stepping. I wish he would move his head more while he does that because he hits some shots. He's not a bad wrestler himself. He's a pretty solid wrestler, some quick entries. He showed off how strong he can be by grabbing his opponent and slamming them. He is a bad defensive wrestler, and he struggled to get off the bottom. If he hits up on top, he's got some mean ground and pound. He has a submission threat. He's got 6 subs on his record. He also almost landed a Kimura against Jamie Malaki. A big issue is cardio. He's gassed in the past. I mean, he gassed against Jamie Malaki. Maybe moving up will help him. To me, this comes down to what kind of fight Matthews wants. If he wants the easy fight, I think he wrestles and he smothers Prado on the ground. If he wants it hard, he has a back and forth kickboxing match. I still think he could win that, but I think it makes the road harder. I think Matthews is still going to be small. I can't imagine him not seeing that he has a big advantage of putting Prado, pinning him on against the ground, using his size to his advantage. I think that's what we get. I think we get a majority of grappling. Give me Matthews by decision.
Next up on the UFC 312 main card is a light heavyweight matchup. Keith, how is Jimmy Crute 28 years old? How is Jim Crute just 28 years old? I'm sorry that people saw me. I'm eating a little bit. It's because we're getting close to the Tafa fight, so it just got me hungry.
No, I've had that kind of crazy night where I couldn't even eat my dinner, so I've been trying to sneak in bites in between segments. Is he 28? Because he already retired. Remember, after his last fight, he retired.
He retired. Apparently, didn't age while retired. And in fairness, he turns 29, I think, in March, so he's almost 29. But by my mental math, that means he's been in the UFC since he was 7 years old. It just, I was shocked, and I have as good a handle on the 610 UFC fighters as probably almost anybody in the world, including the UFC's matchmakers. I talk about them multiple times a week, every week, and there's still something or other that surprises me every single week. This week, it's that Jim Crute is 28 years old. Anyway, let's talk about the fight, and then we'll talk about the fighters. Crute, the still 28-year-old Australian, is 12-4-1 overall. He's 5-4-1 since joining the UFC out of the second season of Dana White's Contender Series. He is coming in off a loss, and in fact, he's coming in on a 4-fight winless streak dating back almost 4 full years. But he didn't fight at all.
He's on the cusp. He's on the cusp of getting drafted. One more.
Really, he is.
All right, no more. I promise, no more GFL jokes.
Well, if we get Jim
for at least one more segment.
If we get Jim Crute versus Sam Alvey too, it's in GFL.
That's right.
So Krut didn't fight at all in 2024. He fought twice in 2023, both times against Alonzo Menefield. The first time was a majority draw that became a majority draw because Menefield was docked a point in the third round for grabbing the fence, rightly so. But then they met again in July of 2023, and Menefield tapped Krut out in the second round. Krut's been on the shelf ever since. It's been a little over 18 months. He is back. He was supposed to be fighting Marcin Prachnio. Prachnio dropped out about a week ago. In steps Rodolfo Bellato. 28-year-old Brazilian is 12-2 overall. He's 1-0 since joining the UFC as a two-time veteran of Dana White's Contender Series. He lost on season 6. He won on season 7. That got him his ticket to the big octagon, where he faced Ihor Potieria a little over a year ago at UFC on ESPN. Dariush versus Sarukian, knocking him out in the second round. So 2 light heavyweights that took all of last year off, stepping back into the cage here. I'll go ahead and quiz you on this one, since nobody knows who's going to win this fight anyway. Your favorite is minus 170. Your underdog is plus 140. Who are they?
Bellato's the favorite.
You're correct. Bellato minus 170, Krut plus 140. I just talked a bit about Jake Matthews and how he's not a complete bust. It just turns out that he's a guy that debuted in the UFC super young and then just turned into just another guy. And being just another guy in one of the best divisions in the sport is hardly a failure. Krut, it's a little easier to point the finger. Like Matthews, he joined the UFC pretty young. He was a prospect with raw physical tools, but he really has not formed any kind of consistent game. I mean, we're talking about a guy with 10 UFC fights, and if you ask me what he's good at, I'm going to be all over the place, because he's good at different things, but very inconsistently. Like, you look at all of his wins, and all of his wins show him showcasing like a different aspect of mixed martial arts, and then all of his losses, it's like a boat with a ton of different leaks in it. Like, he's one of those fighters that just, a lot of things seem to go wrong for him. You look at his fights, you get weird foul point deductions, freakish injuries. Like, anytime you have a submission win over Paul Craig in the third round, but you got guillotined by Alonzo Menefield, you are an inconsistent fighter.
Yeah, that's weird.
That's, I mean, there's some things about Krut that remind me a little bit of like Ovince St. Preux, where he's got some undeniable physical tools and kind of this random assortment of things that he's good at. And sometimes he puts them together and puts on a really impressive win, but other times just it all falls apart and he looks like he doesn't belong in the UFC, period. Like, it's not that he came out the worst of that 2-fight series with Menefield. It's how he did that bothers me. He's become more and more injury prone, which is concerning for a 28-year-old. Like, starting with the weird injury stoppage against Anthony Smith, he took all of 2022 off. And his only fight in between was getting dusted by Jamal Hill in seconds, which that turned out to age pretty well. Jamal Hill knocks out a lot of people quickly. But then he had the 2 weird fights with Menefield and then took all of 2024 off. I think Jimmy Krut is a better fighter than Rodolfo Bellato, but I don't know if we get the real Jimmy Krut, or 70% of Jimmy Krut, or 30% of Jimmy Krut. Weirdly, considering that Bellato didn't fight at all last year either, I feel more comfortable with who he is. He's like a huge, jacked Brazilian who, I feel like I've said this about 6 different fighters on this card, but he's not quite the athlete you would think from like looking at him, but he's got a ton of power, and he does put himself in good positions to use that power. Like, yeah, his knockout was over Ihor Potieria, but Poteria's been an improving fighter. And Bellato did put himself in position to take advantage of Poturia's poor striking defense and actually catch that chin. If this fight were taking place in February of 2024 and both these guys had fought like 3 to 5 months before, I'd feel more comfortable taking Crute in the mild upset. And who knows, the line might not even be what it is. But as it is, with a ton of unknowns, 2 fighters that have been off for a full year, one of whom is basically a new signee to the UFC, and the other of whom is one of the more unlucky / cursed fighters in recent memory, I'm leaning Bellato. I think we're more likely to see him in a closer approximation of his best self than we are Crute. And just Crute might not be that guy anymore. Give me Bellato in a hard-fought slugfest where Crute probably could take Bellato down, but doesn't seem to try until it's too late. Gets beat up a lot for the first 2 rounds. Yeah, I mean, give me the Menafield fight without the point deduction at the end. Give me Bellato just to win the first 2 rounds, Crute to pick up the third once he finally starts deciding to wrestle and it's too little too late.
Oh man, you're talking about Jimmy Crute like starting off so good in the UFC and promising, and like he was going to be like that area of the world's like hope at light heavyweight, and now like he's only 28, but he looks like he's absolutely done. I'm like, this dude's the Jaden Smith of MMA. Like, you know, he's in the pursuit of happiness, all young and cute, and he was going to be great. And now he's walking around with a freaking castle on his head. Shit.
Castle on his head.
Let's go. Jimmy Castlehead
basically, the Anthony Smith fight for Crute, that was after Earth for Jaden Smith. It ruined the hype and it broke him somehow.
Is that the movie he did?
That was this terrible sci-fi movie that he made with his dad, and it was just it was just terrible to the point where like even Will Smith is like, that was a mistake, we shouldn't have done it. It was terrible. Like,
oh, that's fine. These next 2 fights, I'm just gonna be. I like to be honest with all the listeners. I think the next 2 fights are the ones I'm the least into. Like I'm more intrigued by some of the prelim fights because I know it's going to be some good action, and I just think it's going to be some sloppy. Like, yeah, despite he only be 28, which is, I mean, I guess is good. I guess he still has time to turn his career around. He has shown some signs of decline, and after his last fight, saying he was going to retire, you know, I mean, I'm really questioning his confidence and his motivation. Now, he is a good athlete. I mean, his striking is okay. He throws, you know, hard shots down in the pocket. He throws a lot of single strikes. He does lack head movement. He's a bit of a stationary target standing right in front of his foe. He always had a granite chin, and he took a lot of damage because of it, but that chin is starting to get cracked a lot lately. Don't have the confidence in his durability. He does have good power in his fist, though. Like, if you hit him, you just look at the guy that gets jacked. Like, he can land a big shot. He's got a big kicking game, some fast high kicks, some good teep kicks, though he will throw a lot of naked kicks, so he's open to be tagged. He likes to wrestle, but I've said this for a long time. I think his wrestling is grossly overrated. I'd say he's more of a scrambler, pretty good at scrambling and winning positions. He's a good grappler. He's, if you over pursue him, he can time a takedown, but he's more just kind of scramble, follow the hip, win the head battle, cut the angle, little things like that. He looks to advance position on the ground. He has, good ground and pound, but he has gassed himself out a lot in the past from wrestling. You mentioned like the first Menafield fight. He was on fumes. Bellato, I mean, he's a really big guy for the weight class. So taking it and showed a notice, I wonder how he does making the weight. On the feet, he's pretty raw. He does try to make up for it with good volume and good power. But I don't think, I'm with you, man. I don't think he's the athlete that you think he would be. He doesn't really flow well. He's pretty stiff. Defensively, he pillars. He keeps his chin high in the air. He avoids strikes by just moving his head straight back. He kind of or just, no lateral movement with his head. He hates being pressured. He had a lot of shots from Ian Pretoria in his last fight. He really struggled with the speed of Pretoria, which I don't think anybody's ever really said. he can close the distance and use the size to grind in the clinch. He's got a nice plum clinch. He's got some good dirty boxing. He will look for takedowns, but I would hardly call him a wrestler. He's more of a grappler than a wrestler. He is hard to take down, and if he gets on top, he's got some mean ground pound just due to his size, and he's a strong grappler. He's got 4 submission wins. I'm not very high in either of these guys. I don't remember which fight it was, but you were like, can't both guys lose? That's how I feel about this pick.
I said about Nolan versus Borshchev.
Oh yeah. That's how I feel about this pick. I don't want to pick either guy. In fairness to Crute, he hasn't lost to anybody bad, but like you always said, like he lost in a bad way. He has faced higher competition. Oh man, I still think he might be better than Bellato on the feet. I say Bellato tries to take him down. I think Crute might stuff some entries. He might catch Bellato's chin. I'm just, give it to you. I say Crute gets back on the winning ways. Has him like sad speech in the octagon about not giving up on yourself and something like that, and he hugs Joe Rogan. Oh no, Joe Rogan won't be there, so I have to hug Daniel Cormier or something. Give me Crute by second round TKO.
Not today, GFL. Crute keeps his job. Third from the top at UFC 312 is a heavyweight clash between Justin Tafa and the debuting Thaleson Teixeira. Tafa, the 31-year-old Australian, is 7-4 with 1 no contest overall. He's 4-4 with 1 no contest in the UFC. He's coming in off of a loss. He last March at UFC on ESPN, Hebus versus Nami Yunus, where in something straight out of a 90s martial arts movie, he stepped up on days' notice to replace his brother, Junior Tafa, against Carl Williams. Interesting story, interesting trivia notes. The fight was not as interesting as he dropped a pretty straightforward unanimous decision to Williams in a pretty lousy fight. Prior to that, he had been on a 4-fight unbeaten streak and had been gathering some momentum in the UFC heavyweight division. He will look to reclaim that momentum against Teixeira. 25-year-old Brazilian, as soon as he steps in the cage, may be the tallest fighter in the UFC. He's listed at 6'7" by the Sherdog Fight Finder. I've seen some regional promotions that list him at 6'8". That would make him taller than Aleksandre Volkov. We'll see. At any rate, he's 7-0. He fought on the Contender Series last September, where he knocked out Arthur Lopez in the first round. His 7 career wins are all first-round finishes. The last 6 of them knockouts. This guy is what he is. He'll make his debut here. I will quiz you on this one since it's a fairly close line. Your favorite is -140. Your underdog is +115. Who are they, Keith?
Teixeira is the favorite?
You are correct. I've asked you 2 of them. You are 2 for 2 so far. Teixeira is -140. Tafa is +115. Tafa is the other fighter I wrote about in my column this week, him and Wang Cong. And I kind of drew the contrast between the two because Wang Kong's loss last year was, it was as bad as they get. She was given a prime spot in her home country against a massive underdog, and she got choked all the way to sleep. Tafa's is all the way in the opposite spectrum. The guy flew from Australia to Las Vegas expecting to corner his brother, and they're like, oh, yo, do you want to fight his opponent instead? It would have been a great storybook ending if that had turned into Dan Ige versus Diego Lopez, and the plot twist from a karate movie actually turned into a great fight. That wasn't the case, but I am very much inclined to give Justin Tafa an entire pass on the Williams fight. Just one, Williams as a competent boxer and wrestler with reach on Tafa is exactly the kind of guy that was going to give him fits. And on top of that, he had jet lag and no training camp. I just give him a mulligan. I have no idea whether he beat Williams in a regular fight or not. I just know that I didn't learn last March much about it. Prior to that, he'd been on a good trajectory. There was a time when I thought Tafa was one of the worst heavyweights in the UFC. His first contract, his first 4-fight run with the UFC, he went 1-3, and all 4 fighters have washed out of the UFC. Yorgan De Castro, Juan Adams, Carlos Felipe, Jared Vandera. That's the actual bottom of the barrel, and Tafa was under 500 against the bottom of the barrel. He's turned it around since then. He strung together 3 wins in a row, and still against lower level people on the roster, Harry Hunsucker, Austin Lane, Parker Porter, but all of a sudden he was knocking him out in the first round. And he's no different a fighter, except maybe being in a little bit better physical shape. It's hard to tell. He's a Mark Hunt disciple, and he's also a Mark Hunt carbon copy, where sometimes he weighs 285 pounds and has to cut a bunch of water to make the limit. Other times he comes in pretty trim for him, and it does show in his fighting skills. It shows in his in-cage performance, but he's still same guy he basically was. He's a more diverse striker than you would think he is. He looks as squat as he's built. You don't expect that guy to throw head kicks. You don't expect a pot-bellied 6-foot tall heavyweight to KO people with head kicks, but he can. He does have just a massive overhand, but he has a jab. He has decent dexterity with both hands. He's a pretty good heavyweight striker. I still don't think he's a future contender, but he's turned into a guy who, at least up until the Williams fight, was starting to beat the people he was supposed to beat. And if not for that Williams fight, he probably would have gotten booked against an appropriate opponent. And if he'd won, he'd be on the cusp of seeing what he could do against a borderline top 15 guy. All that to say that I think Teixeira is kind of built for Tafa to get back on track against. I'm sure the UFC would love it if Teixeira turned into a big success at heavyweight, and he has plenty of time to. I mean, he's 25 years old. That's practically unborn by heavyweight standards.
Do we have the same note? Yeah.
Yes. He has uncoachable physical gifts. Again, he's 6'7", and it's a similar kind of 6'7" to early career Volkov, where he doesn't have the longest arms. He has better reach than most of his opponents, but he doesn't have the same reach that John Jones does, even though, Jones is 3 inches shorter in height. He knows what he wants to do. I think he goes out at the beginning of each fight with the idea that, okay, I need to keep this guy on the outside, but he also gets drawn into close quarters battles really quickly and really easily, and nobody's really made him pay for it yet. He's knocking everybody out in a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Most of his opponents, a lot of whom in Brazil were blown up light heavyweights, just didn't have the physical tools or the skills to make him pay for any of his bad habits defensively. I kind of set this up an hour or two ago when we started, because, I asked you, name me the very tall for their weight class mixed martial artist that has good head movement. Teixeira isn't one of them. He has a lot of the same habits that you see in early Volkov, that you saw in Stefan Struve, that you see in a lot of, that you saw in James Vick, if you want to go with somebody that's from a lower weight class and was tall for it. As I watched as many of Teixeira's early career fights as I could, and then just kind of refreshed my memory on Tafa, I just can't get past the image in my mind of Tafa clocking Teixeira on the chin in the first round. That's what I'm picking. And I hate picking heavyweight fights, because the way heavyweights are, if you're wrong, you're going to be so wrong that you look stupid and people can make fun of you. Just understand that I'm picking Tafa by first round knockout, but Teixeira by first or second round knockout is probably my second most likely outcome.
Or sub.
Or sub. But if Teixeira is really unguarded about distance, like he has been in some of his regional fights, he's never had a guy like Justin Tafa in the phone booth with him. And Tafa will make him pay. I think my most likely outcome is that Tafa clocks him within the first 3 minutes of the fight. But if Tafa is gun shy after the Williams fight, if Teixeira is just really well prepared for this and knows his game plan and sticks to it. If he starts kicking Tafa's legs and body and Tafa just gets stuck on the outside, like that's entirely possible. And I'd be happy to be wrong here because, you know, I've seen Justin Tafa. I've been to the circus. I've seen the clowns, but I think the clowns are going to get like one more highlight here. Give me Tafa by first round knockout. Teixeira has the higher upside in the division by far, but I think Tafa is going to be part of the learning curve here.
Yeah, I understand why the UFC puts this fight in the main card because, you know, the chances of being a first round spectacular knockout either way is very likely, but I'm still mad about Jenkins and Santos being on the other card. And I know people are like, oh, they're going to get even more views on the ESPN. Like, okay, cool. The top is, I mean, he obviously, we know what we get with the top at this point. He's a gigantic dude. He's southpaw boxer, you know, fairly fast hands based when you look at his body. Yeah, I mean, obviously he's got serious power. I mean, his step back left hand is his best punch. I mean, he destroyed Harry Hunsucker with it. He loves to get inside, look for uppercuts. He has big defensive holes. He doesn't move his head enough. He kind of just ducks behind his forearms. He can be too aggressive at times. I mean, I go back to like the Jorgen De Castro fight where he caught him coming in. His ground game is horrendously bad. I mean, he has no takedown defense. He struggles to get back up. He has terrible fight IQ. When his opponents want to take him down, he makes it easy by throwing high kicks and knees. Teixeira, I mean, I love that he's only 25, as you mentioned. He's obviously huge, 6'8". He's a very good athlete and long and lengthy striker. Good jab, good power. He's got 6 TKOs, good kicks. He'll throw some spinning attacks. You mentioned his strike and defense is the issue. He pulls his head straight back, doesn't move his head, keeps his chin high. I haven't seen much of his offensive ground game, but he is a BJJ black belt. So that right away is better than Tafa. His cardio is questionable, and he's never been out of the first round. I'm not saying
Tafa has the much rarer tattooed on weight belt. Yeah.
Teixeira, I want to say this because I see his questionable cardio, but I'm not saying he has bad cardio because we don't know because he hasn't been out of the first round. I will say this is a really smart matchup for the UFC. I mean, to me, this is probably the very best guy that Tafa could be at this point of his career. Teixeira is extremely hittable. I could totally see what you're saying. Tafa just landing one hitter quitter on him, especially because Teixeira kind of back straight up. He doesn't like being pressured. But you go back to the Contender Series fight, the guy was teeing off on him a couple times, rocked him a couple times. However, Teixeira is young, so he could clean up some of that defense. He has power himself. I'm assuming he's the better grappler. I mean, he's a BJJ black belt, so that should be better than. I mean, I don't know. You don't have to be a BJJ black belt to be better grappler than Tafa. I mean, you can be a blackjack dealer and be better than grappler than Tafa. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that joke, but man, I like how you said it, like the likely outcomes. One outcome I could see happen is Tafa crack into Teixeira after Teixeira stands on him and Teixeira says F this and then starts taking Tafa down. I could also see like Tafa like blasting Teixeira, dropping him and then like swinging a big like haymaker, like to follow up and like falling on the ground himself and he's like a beach whale and Teixeira's on top of him and man, it's funny because I'm sitting there and I'm like, are you really going to take Justin Tafa in 2025 on a pay-per-view main card, third from the freaking top, Justin Tafa?
He is the highest Australian on the card.
Justin Tafa? Like, where's Dan Hooker at? I mean, I know he's supposed to play Justin Gaethje, but like, why didn't they get Justin Gaethje and Hooker?
Too bad Israel Adesanya is
yeah, he fought a week ago. Like, couldn't get him on the card. With Kai Kara France, like, where are these guys at? Elvis. I'd rather have to watch Elvis Sinisek. King of Rock and Rumble. Nobody's getting that reference except for me and you. Yeah, I'm gonna do it, man. When I was watching the Contender Series fight, I just kept watching this guy get cracked. I'm like, nobody can take punches like that from Taffa. I say Taffa puts him out with a big shot. I'm seeing it the same exact way. I say Taffa gets him near the fence, steps into a shot, and cracks him. Give me Taffa by first round knockout. The place going crazy, bear flying everywhere. Justin Taffa by knockout.
There you go. You have your first, maybe your only, unanimous Shillan and Duffy upset pick for UFC 312. That brings us to the co-main event of UFC 312. A strawweight title fight between your defending champ, Zhang Weili, and challenger, undefeated, Tatiana Suarez. Zhang, the champ, 35-year-old from China, 25-3 overall. She is 9-2 in the UFC. She's on a 4-fight win streak since her back-to-back losses to former champ Rose Namajunas. In that time, she has wins over Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Carla Esparza, Amanda Lemos, and Yan Xiaonan. The most recent of those, the Yan fight, was her only cage appearance of 2024. It was at UFC 300 in April. She beat Yan by a lopsided, one-sided, unanimous decision. She'll be looking for yet another title defense, her 5th win in a row against Suarez. Suarez, 34-year-old from Southern California, is a perfect 10-0 as a professional mixed martial artist. She is a perfect 7-0 in the UFC. That's the good news. The bad news is that she has 7 fights in 7.5 years in the UFC. Her most recent appearance was August of 2023, where she tapped out Jessica Andrade in the 2nd round. It was a fantastic win, easily the best of her career to date. Considering that was her 2nd cage appearance of 2023, it looked as though the talented but injury-prone Suarez was finally healthy and ready to make a run at the title, and that was 18 months ago. Here she is. She's back. She's in the title fight that a lot of us expected her to have been in long before now. She finally gets her shot at gold. The favorite in this fight is -125. The underdog +105. It's about as close as you can get to a pick'em. Who are they, Keith?
Yeah, I'm glad that it's close to a pick'em. I'll say Weili is the favorite.
Your favorite is Tatiana Suarez.
Oh, all right.
Think about this for a moment. And I should have looked this up.
Usually what we don't do on this show is think. So I don't know why you changed the rules for us, my man.
Let me look at one more thing. Okay, so I'm not saying I disagree with it. Okay. I'm not saying I disagree with the line. I'm not saying that my pick is going to go against the line, but Weili Zhang is the UFC's number 2 pound-for-pound woman. She is Sherdog's number 3 pound-for-pound woman, and the odds makers have her.
Who's the 2 we have over? I can't.
Chris Cyborg and Valentina Shevchenko.
Cyborg shouldn't be over at this point, okay?
Probably not. It feels a bit like a lifetime achievement award. I mean, there's no question that
we gotta go down a slippery slope with the John Jones Award. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the quality of people she's been beating.
And I'm a Chris Cyborg backer. I've always been.
Yeah. I think she might be the best female fighter on the planet. She just is in a division where she doesn't get to prove it. She's fighting Sinead Kavanaugh, and Arlene Blancow.
Sure.
Anyway, Zhang is the UFC's number 2 pound-for-pound woman. She's Sherdog's number 3 pound-for-pound woman, and she is a slight underdog to an opponent that has not fought in 18 months. It is, and obviously you can take it as that's enormous disrespect for a dominant champ, but at the same time, it is an indication of what everyone seems to agree with about Suarez, that when she is healthy,
she's Cain Velasquez.
I love that you mentioned that because I was thinking about where I would place her right now on the list of greatest injury what ifs in MMA history. And I'd place her second, right ahead of Cain Velasquez and right behind Dominic Cruz. Because the thing about Velasquez is, even when Velasquez is healthy, he actually did lose a fight here or there. When Cruz was healthy, not only did nobody beat him for a decade, barely anybody could lay a finger on him. Like, nobody even gave him a fight.
Yeah, the one thing I'd say about them too, though, is they did reach the top of the mountain. She's never had that chance.
Yes.
This is it. And I mean, they had multiple chances. This is her really only shot. I mean, yeah, I guess technically she could lose and come back a couple of years later, but like, do you expect her to be older? And
even if she hadn't been injured and beat cancer, I mean, we're talking about a woman that's had like neck surgeries, spine surgeries, beat cancer. Even without those things, she'd be a 34-year-old strawweight.
Yeah,
with a wrestling heavy style.
It would be a really, like, I don't think the story will be told enough. And I know there was a big documentary recently on her, but it truly, like, you could make a movie out of her life. Mm-hmm. Like, sure, it'd be like a fucking Lifetime movie, but whatever. Still.
No,
Patty Mix would have to kiss her, under the snow as the snow comes down, and suddenly they both live in a small town in Vermont. But yeah, other than those little details.
And instead of like being from like West Covina, California, she'd be in Vermont somewhere.
Yeah, Vermont. And she'd be blonde, obviously.
Of course. Okay, assuming that Suarez is healthy, that she is the same woman that absolutely trucked Montana De La Rosa and Jessica Andrade in 2023.
I don't think she trucked De La Rosa, though. People should rewatch that fight. Like, she clearly won. No doubt. I don't think she looked as good as people remember. She looked better against Andrade.
I thought she looked like good for someone coming back almost 4 years later up a weight class.
Yes.
Against a woman who was big for that weight class and was herself like wrestling is her best.
Sure. Like it could have been a lot of those factors. Like, yeah, like someone who has a wrestling background and she's bigger and usually Schwartz is the bigger fighter. So yeah, that's a good point.
But assuming that she is that same woman, like what she brings to the cage against Zhang, she's the best technical wrestler in the women's divisions. She's probably the best technical wrestler in the history of the women's divisions, including Sarah McMahon. I know Sarah McMahon is more.
Sarah came in much later. Sarah did I went as far as I can in wrestling. Now I come over.
Right.
Well, it comes down to what I've said about Bo Nickel, where yes, he is not the most decorated compared to guys we've had, but he came when he could still compete at the highest level. Kevin Jackson didn't do that. Nope. Mark Schultz didn't do that. Everyone was talking about Henry Cejudo being an Olympic gold medalist. They forget that 4 years later he tried to go it again and he didn't make the Olympics.
Yeah.
So he wasn't close.
No. Henry Cejudo was the best wrestler in the world for a month.
He was the best wrestler in the world for about 30 seconds in a match. Yeah. but still, I'm not. That's obviously still a crazy accomplishment.
But Suarez is, I mean, wrestling wise, she's the total package. I like that you mentioned Bo Nickel, and obviously that's because we have to every single episode. But she's got some of the same stuff. Like she is
similar build,
taller, lanky, with like a big wingspan. That she
both beautiful.
Of course, yeah. She is capable of doing a smooth shot from the outside, as Bo Nickel is, but a lot of her best takedowns come when she already has her hands on the other woman. Just stuff that you would expect to see.
Yeah, neither are your traditional. Neither have your traditional bodies, wrestler bodies. Mm-hmm. McMahon has a traditional female wrestler body.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like
hell, Zhang has more of a traditional female wrestler body than Suarez does.
Absolutely.
Suarez, injuries aside, age aside, is a smooth athlete. Just like fast, fluid on the feet. kind of like standout amateur wrestlers. Like the names that always come to mind for me are Chris Weidman and Ben Askren, where as soon as they started training in submission grappling for MMA, it just like it ticked over instantly. They were naturals at it. She seems to be that way, where she's like, oh, okay, how I win now isn't just by like turning the angle of somebody's shoulders. I actually need to get into this position where I can choke him or threaten with choking or punch him in the head. No problem. That's been Suarez. And yeah, she might be the best wrestler we've ever seen in the women's divisions. She's taken other very good wrestlers like Carla Esparza, and
that's to me is peak her game. That was to me when she was her scariest, what she did to Carla Esparza.
Yeah,
I don't know if she's right now fighting the best version of herself, and I don't think the one that beat Andrade and De La Rosa is the best version. I think the one before the another injury against Carla Esparza, that was the one where everyone knew she was the best person in the world. I don't care who's the champion.
Yeah,
anyway,
I'm kind of reeling because I realized that I completely agree with you. That was the fight where I went, okay, the only thing standing between her and a title is her health. And the only thing standing between her and a dynasty or an era is her health. And sure enough, her health has intervened ever since. I mean, we're talking about a woman that she's only 34 and she's had a 4-year layoff and a 1.5 year layoff already. She has 7 UFC fights in 7.5 years. Like, I'm glad she's getting this.
Sorry to interrupt you. Since then, Carla Esparza would go on to win 6 fights in a row to win the UFC title, and then lose 2 fights and be retired for a while now, compared to how many times Suarez has fought since then.
And in my mind, somewhere in the back of my mind, Suarez's stock went for that ride with Esparza. Because Esparza went back to winning fights, Carla Esparza style. Sure. She out-wrestled all of them.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
And having said all that, her routes to victory against Weili Zhang in a 5-round fight, I think they're tough sledding. If Suarez is healthy, if she is a reasonable facsimile of what she was in mid 2023, I think she can take Zhang down. Like Zhang, she can be taken down. She is, while I think she's gotten better as a technical wrestler, she is still more of an athlete and a powerhouse than like a scientific wrestler. Zhang is so athletic, so powerful, so tough mentally and physically that she has carved out an all-time resume for herself with a pretty basic bread and butter skill set. Like she, I think Zhang wins this, and I think she wins it. One, because while I think if Suarez wants to take Zhang down, she'll be able to, especially and at least in the early going. But your guess is as good as mine how Tatiana Suarez will look 2.5 rounds into this fight. Whereas I know, like, I've seen Zhang tired, but I've never seen her gassed, and I've never seen her losing because she was tired. And I've had 5 or 6 5-round fights to watch her in of all different kinds. Low volume striking battles, wild striking battles, fights that had a good amount of wrestling. She is at her best in 5-round fights. She is going to be the best athlete Suarez has taken on. While she doesn't have the credentials of Esparza, considering how badly she beat Esparza on the ground, she's going to be the best ground fighter that Suarez has taken on, and she's going to be by far the hardest hitter that Suarez has taken on.
Yep.
I'm picking Zhang to win, and I'm thinking Zhang wins by a TKO in the late rounds. if I'm right, then what I hope for out of this fight is a showing out of Suarez that justifies the hype, that justifies my faith, your faith in her over the last 5 or 6 years, shows that she belongs here and she belonged here the whole time. And that's what I'm picking to happen. Give me Zhang by round 4 TKO in a fight in which she's down 2 rounds to none going into the third.
I'm sitting there. I'm still thinking about the Tatiana Suarez versus Carlos Esparza, and like I said, so I forgot about the Nina Ansaroff fight. So she fought 3 times, Ansaroff, De La Rosa, and Andrade since then. Yeah. But
it was Ansaroff, or she might have been Nunes at the time. Then a years long gap, and then
it was she fought. If you remember, she fought Nina Ansaroff. It was 9 months later. She didn't look that good. She won by unanimous decision, but didn't look that great. And then she was gone for almost 4 years when she fought Montana De La Rosa. Fought a pretty quick turnaround against Jessica Andrade, which was obviously her best performance recently. Mm-hmm. And then hasn't fought in, a year and a half, or whatever, 18 months you said. Man, so what I want to say about Carlos Esparza is she's fought 8 times since then, had a retirement, been out for it, and I forgot this little detail. She also had a baby. Like, we forget about that. Like, she missed time because she had a baby in there. This is my main event. Just because of all the things you said, I'm more excited. I've seen Duplessis and Strickland. No, go on.
Recently.
Yeah, recently. It's going to be a good fight, but the storylines, like, this shouldn't be playing second fiddle. This should be headlining, and the storyline shouldn't be something goofy that freaking Strickland says during the press conference. It should be, is Weili Zhang can she really cement herself as one of the greatest female fighters ever? Is she on the Mount Rushmore with this win? And Tatiana Suarez, can the biggest what if, in women's history finally reach the top and have that storybook ending. One thing that you talk about Suarez and her age and injuries, and I know people have talked about this, but I'll say it again, and this needs to be in the storyline. It isn't talked enough about Weili doesn't fight often. She's fought 2 times in 2 years, and she's also 35 years old. So when we last saw her, she obviously was really good. Don't get me wrong. I'm a Weili Zhang guy. How can you not be? But 35, like, she could suddenly lose a step. And being that she's such an explosive athlete, that could be a big thing. She's such a great athlete. She moves well. She has high output on the feet. She attacks with combination. She's pound for pound one of the hardest hitters in women's MMA history. I always think about, like, how she won the title. She starts Jessica Andrade. She beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk so bad in their first fight that knowing who's fighting the fight, when you look at a picture, you don't see Joanna Jędrzejczyk's face. You can't recognize who it is. Like, that's how bad she beat her. And then how did she follow that up with a KO of the year, all-time KO against Joanna in the second fight? She mixes kicks into her punching combinations really well. She usually has a really good, with the kicks, really good game of that. Though her last fight against Yan Xiaonan, she was throwing some naked kicks, which is a little worry. Defense is always not top priority for her. It's always been that case. She's always willing to eat a shot to land a harder shot of herself. She's willing, as I call it, she's put herself in that danger zone. She's starting to show some wrinkles, but she was dropped a few times by Yan Xiaonan, who, who's a good striker herself, but not known for, like, big power puncher. She's a good wrestler herself, like, really good wrestler. She took down Amanda Lemos a bunch of times. She blanketed Amanda Lemos in that fight. She took Yan Xiaonan down over and over again with ease. The one that's really impressive is the second fight against Rose Namajunas. She took her down 5 times in their fight. She can get upper body takedowns. She can shoot from distance and get takedowns. She's good at just winning scrambles. She's got a smothering top game. Great pack day. She's definitely a submission threat. Look how she subbed Carlos Esparza to regain the title. It was absolutely spectacular what she did on the ground. She's got great cardio. spider age, and she's got, she has one thing that Tatiana Suarez doesn't have. She has lots of 5-round experience. Tatiana Suarez, as far as I know, she's never been in a 5-round fight. Another thing that's not talked about Suarez is how she gets booked to fight Verna Jandiroba. Somehow she gets injured again because it's Tatiana Suarez, and she pulls out a fight, and then her reward is to come back and get the title shot. Not Verna Jandiroba, who didn't pull out, and Tatiana Suarez gets the title shot. I don't think I've been as high as other people on her return. Like we talked about, I think she looked okay. Like, obviously, be interesting on Andrade the way she did is super impressive. And I think you made some really good points about Montana De La Rosa that should be considered. But like the Jessica Andrade, like in finish, hasn't really aged well. She's been a big 50-50 fighter since then, probably. Like I said, 5 years ago, I'd be picking Tatiana Suarez, and I'd be picking it like big. I'd be like, she's gonna dominate Weili Zhang. I just, like I said, at the Cain Velasquez, is it Cain Velasquez coming back? Facing Francis Ngannou, and we're still doing the what ifs, and it's really, she's just gonna get stars. I hope she has a little left in the tank. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping we get an epic fight. Like, even the way you said, if she loses, but it's an epic fight where it goes deep into the fight, where Weili has to rally back, that'd be awesome. What does she do good? Going off of what we've last seen her, and assuming nothing has changed, she's big for the weight class. She's a long and lengthy fighter. She's a southpaw. She stalks her opponents, but still like keeps her range when she wants to strike, to land long distance strikes. She does tend to throw too many single strikes, doesn't really combine them. She throws a lot of kicks because, one, she's long, she's got long legs and everything, but also she's not worried if you grab her leg. Like she's inviting you to grab her leg. So she does keep her chin a little too high in the air for my liking. But at the end of the day, her striking is to set up her entry. She's the best wrestler in MMA. She's got still, and I'm still confident that she will be, even if she's declined since we last seen her. She has fast entries. She chains takedowns together well. She will sometimes shoot too far away, but her long arms kind of allow her to finish those. She can drive through the hips well. She also will use her size and just rest. Like she had no problem like getting on the legs, just resting there until you make a mistake trying to land an elbow or something, and she just use that little, imbalance against you. She also just, will get like an underhook and just grind against the fence, use her size there. It's actually something I think it would be actually pretty smart to get Weili early, try to take away some of that, like her punching power, but get the lactic acid into her arms and have her clinch and pummel with her. If she takes it down, smother in top game. She's got that like dagger. So sometimes she's a really good wrestler, obviously, but it's a top game though. It's sometimes not. It might be easier to stuff the takedowns, but when she gets it down, that's when it gets serious. I mean, she's smothering top game. She has that Dagestani like handcuff, hard ground pound. I mean, I go back to it. I mean, it was forever ago, but what she did to Carlos Esparza was. I mean, Esparza must have nightmares about it. She has a submission threat. She has 5 subs on a record. So, as prediction goes, it's a really close line. I can see why some people are, team Weili and confident that pick. I can see why people are team Suarez and confident that pick. Ben, we've been doing this show for, I don't know, forever now. Yeah, since Suarez's last fight. Let me ask you this. You know me well. Who am I taking?
I think you're taking Cong.
Okay. This is hard. It's hard for a couple of reasons. One, and I feel like I'm talking a lot, but I'm kind of trying to give these guys the main event treatment because to me this is the main event. This is a hard fight because I'm high on both, but I think there's major question marks about both. Like, people will point out the question marks about Suarez, but not the question marks about Zhang. Zhang worries me because she's 35. She's been almost as inactive as Suarez has been. Yeah, not for 5 years, but you get my point. She's shown some signs of decline in the Yan fight,
and has taken punishment even in her wins, like you pointed out.
And yes, I mean, think about I still think you want to J check Weili Zhang first fight. might be the best fight I've ever made, including men's. Like, what I love about that fight is every round was a toss up. Like, it was incredible. Every round was a toss up, and every round was round of the year candidate. I like her chin, but it might start defailing her. And way she fights, she can't allow it to fail her. She has a little bit of like a Justin Gaethje type game. Suarez obviously worries me because, she isn't well-rounded. She obviously is crazy inactive. You can't trust her body. We know about all the big injuries. What about the little injuries that we don't know about? Plus, Suarez is 34 herself. A huge part of Zhang's game is being stronger and being a better wrestler. Well, neither is the case against Suarez. I think people, both people in this fight will have their moments. You don't know me, man. I was setting you up. I don't go against high-level American wrestlers. I don't do it. I have two. You're a homer when it comes to Texas. I'm a homer when it comes to USA, good old USA wrestling. Give me Suarez to get some takedowns, to win some close rounds. I keep wanting to do the opposite. I keep wanting to pick Suarez to find a submission. Like, I keep thinking about Suarez hooks in on her back after wearing her down for long times. Whaley giving up her back and Suarez locking in a rear naked choke. You know what? I was originally going to say Suarez by unanimous decision. I'm going to say she does it real late. I'll say Suarez, 4th round, rear naked choke. And new. I don't think her run's going to be as long as people expect, but give me Tatiana Suarez by 4th round submission.
Hey, that kind of respectful disagreement is why you tune into the Shillan and Duffy show. I hope that's why you tune in. If it's for story time, we'll make sure to give you more of that. But we have some disagreement right up at the top of this card.
There you go.
With that, we come to the main event of UFC 312, a rematch for the undisputed UFC middleweight title between your reigning champ, Dricus du Plessis, and the man from whom he took the title, Sean Strickland. Du Plessis, the 31-year-old South African, is 22-2 overall. He is 8-0 since joining the UFC a little under 5 years ago. He is your current UFC middleweight champ. He took the title from Strickland just a little over a year ago at UFC 297, then defended it last August at UFC 305, tapping out Israel Adesanya with a rear naked choke turned face crank in the 4th round. He will look to make his second title defense here against former champ Strickland. 33-year-old from Southern California is 29-6 overall. He is 16-6 in the UFC. He's 9-3 since moving up from welterweight to middleweight. His early UFC run took place in the welterweight division. He was perfectly competitive there, but after an absence of over a year due to a severe knee injury in a motorcycle wreck, he came back and decided that his best future lay at 185 pounds. He is proven right, as he won the title back in 2023 in a shocking, at the time, upset of Adesanya, lost it last year to du Plessis, and earned his way back to a repeat title shot with a split decision win over Paulo Costa at UFC 302 last June. Whether a win over Paulo Costa in 2024 should be enough to get you a title shot is open for debate. Bilal Muhammad certainly made his opinions known on that this week. But however we got here, we are here for the rematch. Perhaps unsurprisingly, considering the outcome of their first fight, du Plessis is your champ. He's minus 200. Strickland is plus 170. I talked about this a little bit on our recap for UFC Saudi Arabia on Saturday night. Dricus du Plessis is neck and neck with Jan Blachowicz for the most underestimated championship level fighter in the UFC in recent years. But with Blachowicz,
and maybe Bilal Muhammad.
Yeah, and maybe Bilal Muhammad. Although Muhammad had that thing where there was starting to be a clamor, okay, give this guy his title shot, and
yeah. But it seemed like more like, God, let's get it over with.
Let's get it out of the way.
I think me and you both picked Micallef, but we were in the minority of that one. That was one of our best picks.
It was. I'm proud of that one. With Blachowicz, I can understand why, and same reason with Muhammad and Blachowicz in some ways. They'd been there forever. It took them a while to start separating from the pack. They had kind of grindy fight styles, low-key personalities. With Duplessis, it's this weird thing where until you're fighting him yourself, he looks like he's not a very good fighter. And that is why, and this is the reason it came up on last weekend's recap, when Eugene Behrman, Israel Adesanya's coach, more or less admits that they underestimated Duplessis going into that fight. And then when you have the UFC's 155-pound champ saying, yeah, I could move up to 185 and beat Duplessis, no problem. I feel like every other champ in the UFC secretly thinks they could beat Dricus Duplessis, like even Alexandre Pantoja and probably Merab Dvalishvili and maybe the women's champs too. I rewatched Duplessis versus Strickland 1. Like, why wouldn't I? It was a year ago. They're effectively the same fighters. Duplessis looked terrible. For the first 2 full rounds of the fight, he didn't even try to get out of the way of Strickland's jab. Like Strickland had busted him up so bad by the beginning of the 3rd round. I was like, this thing, like, that swollen eye might actually become a factor in this fight. And then Duplessis just flipped a switch and started doing his thing, even if I actually still scored the fight for Strickland. Just nonetheless, Duplessis isn't good at anything but winning fights. I mean, that's not entirely true and it's not entirely fair. He has things he does well, but they pretty much run off his athleticism. He is, by the tail of the tape, he is not the biggest middleweight on the planet, but he seems physically stronger than just about everybody he fights. He is an explosive athlete, and that's what makes his kind of quirky, low volume, unorthodox striking work. It's definitely what makes his ground game work. I mean, he's another guy that doesn't really have a textbook amateur wrestling pedigree or skill set, but has become very effective at getting guys down. And it's just because of his horsepower. He finishes takedowns that you shouldn't be able to finish. Like, people sprawl properly and he still just hoists them and dumps them. He did it to Strickland. Strickland sprawled well. Duplessis picked him up, carried him across the cage, and dumped him at the base of the fence in front of his own corner. It's easy for me to say, well, I take Duplessis. He won the first fight, but I scored the first fight for Strickland. But the thing is, in a rematch, I have every confidence that Strickland is going to come out and do or try to do the exact same thing, whereas Duplessis is going to try to do something different. It'll be something that he and his coaches have cooked up. It'll be something he comes up with on the spur of the moment. I'm floundering here because, their first fight was recent. It was competitive. I didn't feel like I had a great handle on it, even if I picked the outcome right. But I think if we get another one like that, where Strickland looks great, making the Sean Strickland game plan work in stretches. And if there is a story to the first fight, it is Strickland winning 4 minutes of a round versus Duplessis winning the other minute of the round much more loudly. And that's what leads to split decisions. That's what leads to scorecards being all over the place. I expect that here as well. Like, Strickland's best performances come when he gets an opponent that just can't deal with him moving forward, throwing lots of jabs and mixing in the 1-2. He completely defanged Adesanya with that. He gave Duplessis fits with that. But he's not a finisher because of that. Like, he freely admits, he's like, I'm a low power striker. I'm not really a finisher. I think we're going to get another close fight. I think would not be surprised at all if we get another split decision. And I think it's the same dynamic again. Strickland winning most of a round, Duplessis looking hapless, looking frustrated, getting marked up, and then Duplessis breaking out with individual moments of big offense. catching Strickland with a big kick that has him backing up, obviously hurt, getting like slamming him and doing some work on top before Strickland can get back up. Give me Du Plessis by decision again. And I guess all I'm hoping for out of this is for Strickland or Du Plessis, I guess, not to say anything really, really regrettable during fight week, and for this to be more of a clear-cut victory for whoever wins. You know, if Strickland wins, let it be clear-cut so that we definitely have to have a trilogy. If Du Plessis wins, let it be real clear-cut so there's no question of needing one and the division can move on. But I'll take Du Plessis by decision with not a ton of confidence.
Yeah, I don't think anything's going to happen at like media day or anything like that. I mean, like then I know the build up to their first fight was pretty bad, but then like the week of the fight, they actually calmed real down and was like fairly respectful to each other. And I think it's going to be the same way now.
They were both like, we both hate Izzy worse than each other. Why are we doing that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a fun fight. Like, I know I was like pumping up Zhang and Suarez, and like, don't get me wrong, like, I don't think Strickland, like you said, you know, beat Paulo Costa, get you a title shot. Like, I don't think Strickland should have got a title shot. I thought Chimaev should have jumped him. I mean, I think you could have made an argument for Malbuff if you want. But still doesn't mean this isn't a really good fight. I mean, their first fight was awesome. I mean, well, I shouldn't say awesome, but it was very close and competitive. There was times it was awesome. What I'll say about Du Plessis, I mean, very similar. You said, I kept doubting this dude, and he just keeps winning. And I used to kind of be like this anti-Du Plessis guy, where he's not that good. He just hasn't run into the right person. He could have lost to Brad Tavares. He could have lost to this guy, that guy. And then slowly time, I just kind of respect what he does, and I kind of became a fan. I never thought he was that good. He isn't great anywhere, but we've said it over and over again. He's the best bad fighter ever. I mean, yeah. Last time he fought, you know, my answer to what is he great at? He's great at winning. Yep. Like he's an elite at winning, and how he does it. He's a very smart guy. He puts himself in the best chance of winning each bout in different ways. He's unorthodox. He can fight out of both stances and kind of keeps his opponents guessing. He has deceivingly long arms where he lands when his opponent thinks they're out of range. He doesn't stop working. He will go hard for 25 minutes. He's a pressure counter striker, good output, attacks with combination. He has way more power than anybody gave him credit for. He's got, he has 9 TKOs. He's got, half of those are in the UFC. Now, he does telegraph and load up and do a lot of things that you shouldn't do. He'll occasionally throw out some spinning attack, but sometimes he just kind of get his opponent to back away from him and get them on their back foot. He has thudding leg kicks. He has, everyone knows he has major defensive issues. He's very hittable. He backs straight up to avoid shots. He pillars. He hates being pressured back. He's been hurt in so many fights. I mean, he's going to be hurt in this fight. But the dude is insanely tough. And one thing he does that is, I think about like what is guys' game centered around. I think like Merab. Merab's is his unbelievable cardio, and I wouldn't say that about Du Plessis. What I think he's centered around is he never allows his opponent to really get momentum going. Every time they have a good moment, he'll just move forward and have them have to do something different, whether it's defending takedown that he doesn't even get, but just to change them, whatever. He'll throw us, Izzy hits him with a nice clean right, and then he throws a spinning back fist that's forced Izzy kind of like on his back foot, or he clinches, or I think that's what he's really good at. It's kind of keeping the momentum a lot. Don't get me wrong. He's an underrated wrestler. He isn't a technically sound wrestler. He just has this dog in him where he has a wrestling mentality. Like I've said it before, he reminds me of Bilal Muhammad in the sense, in the wrestling sense, where he's not as strong of a wrestler as Muhammad is, but he's opportunistic and he gets the takedowns when there's an even slight opportunity. He takes everybody down. He took Strickland down 6 times in that fight. And again, like Strickland, those are what I'm talking about when I'm saying about changing momentum. Strickland be having to wait, and then Strickland suddenly has to defend a takedown, and he gets him down, but then Strickland, gets ready to back up. Maybe it's 20 seconds to get back up. It's just enough to stop what Strickland was doing well. I mean, and it's not just, he took on Whitaker, who's a good wrestler. He took on Brunson, who's a good worker. He's got some of the best ground and pound in the UFC. He's a good grappler. He's one of these guys who'll just jump right on your back, backpacks well. He had obviously his submission threat. He has 11 subs in his career, including, one in his last fight. And despite his weird breathing technique that they always talk about, he showed he can go hard all 25 minutes, and he never panics. That's another thing that's super thing. He never panics when things are going bad. He's so mentally tough. Strickland, he's a really good striker. He slowly marches down his foe. He's technically sound, very relaxed. Sometimes too relaxed. He can cruise, and because he isn't getting hurt, he's giving away rounds. I mean, look at the first Duplessis fight. His lack of urgency makes rounds closer than they look, and judges hate his style, and he really has himself to blame. He starts a little slow because he likes to set traps, but he picks the pace as the fight goes on. Though he really didn't pick up the pace in the Duplessis fight. He kind of kept it in, like he was doing 55 on the highway and then wonder why people are passing him. He did start fast against Adesanya, but I really think that's like an outlier. I talked about Duplessis' entire game is control momentum. Strickland's entire game is built off a jab. I mean, not to be some like fight predictor and guy to know that. Everybody knows that. I mean, he has one of the best jabs in the history of the game. He follows that with straight punches down the pipe. He keeps everything tight. He doesn't really overextend on his shots. Not many tells. A big issue is he has no power. He doesn't really hurt guys. Like he beat you, like, what do they say? Like, beat him by 1,000 cuts. Like, he's not hitting you with one big shot. He's not throwing a grenade in there. I will say, he dropped out of Sonya, but that's the outlier. Like, that's the one, one big one. And honestly, that win has not aged well at all. So take that for what it's worth. He throws hard kicks to the body, good calf kicks, but he almost, like, you go back to the Duplessis fight, like, he almost never kicked him. And I think some of that might be likely that he was worried about being taken down, and then due to Duplessis wrestling so much, he might have been thinking he was worried about getting caught. He's also open to leg kicks himself. But though against Costa, he was checking leg kicks, which was good. He can battle in the clinch. He doesn't offensive wrestler, but like the one time he really decided to wrestle against like Uriah Hall, he took him down 4 times. He like I mentioned, the Duplessis took him down 6 times, but like he made him, every takedown was hard, and he popped right back up. So he's got a pretty good sprawl and brawl game, and he doesn't get tired, and that's because he's, like I said, he's working slightly above the speed limit. He's like a video game, like you play like my son has like maybe it's Mortal Kombat or one of these games where like you have like special moves, but then if you do it too much, like your energy level go down, and you have to like wait a little while to build back up. He's the guy he's just hitting the B button over again. So it's like you're not using a special move, but you never have to like slow down and take a break. That's kind of Strickland's game. So as far as prediction goes, I mean, these two guys, they couldn't be polar opposites the way they fight. I mean, Strickland is this technically sound guy. Duplessis is this crazy unorthodox guy who does everything that shouldn't work. Strickland can cruise at time. Duplessis is constantly on the gas. Strickland is very defensively sound, hard to hit because of that, blocking. He's parrying punches. He's got a Philly shell going. Well, Duplessis has. I mean, he's never seen a punch coming his way that he didn't try to deflect with his face. Strickland hardly wrestles. Duplessis is an underrated wrestler. Strickland doesn't have much power, and Duplessis has underrated power. So there's so polar opposites, which makes it so exciting. This is a good matchup. The first fight was razor close. I think I don't remember how I scored. I think I scored it for Duplessis. But I was okay with anybody who gave it to Strickland. If Strickland would up his output and stay on the gas, he really could dominate Duplessis. But I don't think he gets the chance. I think Duplessis is going to do his thing. I think he's going to eat some jabs, but then he's going to counter some big shots of his own. I think every time Strickland starts marching forward, he will be answered by Duplessis pushing him back or doing something. And I think Duplessis will add in some takedowns. I think it will be close. but not as close as the first fight. I don't think it's going to be controversial this time. I think Duplessis is going to win. I think he's going to hurt Strickland a few times on the feet. I think he might win some rounds by more decisively by adding a takedown or two. Give me Duplessis by a decision.
There you have it. And that is the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 312, Duplessis versus Strickland 2. I have been Ben. He has been Keith. If this is your first time watching or listening to one of our preview shows, first of all, thank you. We hope you enjoyed it. We try to bring a mix of in-depth analysis and occasional historical or humorous asides that we think is pretty unique in this space. Please do like, subscribe. Neither of those things cost you anything. They make our bosses happy. They allow us to keep bringing you this content free of charge, along with the occasional live read for a new energy drink. And drop us a comment. Keith and I both man the comment section. We'd love to hear your take on these fights. We each picked some upsets tonight. I picked a big upset. If you think I'm out of my gourd, please let me know. If you're right and I'm wrong, I'll give you all the credit on the recap as long as you join us. Do hang out with us for the recap. We'll be live on the Sherdog YouTube page right after this main event. Keith takes the captain's chair. We'll talk about all 13 of these fights from the top down to the opener, talking about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, what was controversial. There's always something. Talking about what's next. Yeah, what's next for the notable winners as well as losers. There'll be a lot of that talk on this card. And talking with you. The live chat is open that whole time on our YouTube page, so we are taking your questions, your comments, and your hot takes in real time. We have a growing community of friends that hang out with us after the fights, and we'd love for you to be part of it. Between now and then, thank you once again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week. Go on Amazon and get some VALR Energy drink, and by all means, enjoy these fights.
To the sea. Make your bed of fairy tales while you're